Asia CEO is really a sought-after brand and recognition among the private sector.
I work abroad as an OFW, and I've seen the experience of how Filipino were treated that time. So I always thought of creating an event someday to really recognize Filipinos and also market Philippines.
Let's present Philippines in a positive light. And the goal is expand your business, start your business, move your business to Philippines, hire Filipinos. They're good people to work with, and you'll do well. That's the goal.
Way back when we were the poor or sick country of Asia, and now if you take a look at, for example, the BPO industry, we're #1 in the world. There's a lot of potential for the country, and if we are really going to see fruition that we are going to be one of the top economies by 2050, I think it is very important for us to really pool our resources together.
And we always believed from the beginning that this association was the right medium, the right structure, and the right outfit to really put the Philippine business community on top of the agenda for the Filipino people and also for the international community.
Well, it gives me a fantastic insight in terms of how broad the industries are and how many different types of successes that are contributing to the growth and inclusive growth of this nation.
We have to create a future where our next generation of talent and leaders is prepared for all of the new opportunities that will present themselves.
Asia CEO Forum is very unique because it is more than any other forum emphasizing that this is about nation building.
Economic growth is a very wide subject, and Asia CEO Forum always find the right angle with the right topic at the right time to talk about, and that's why there is such attraction to these events.
They connect people, but they also create a platform for transfer of best practices, best knowledge.
I believe in the vision of Richard and Rebecca. I think they have this vision to help make the Philippines a first world country in 2030.
And with our partnership together, I know that we're achieving a lot of things.
Thank you for what you're doing. We applaud your efforts. We're proud and happy to be your partners.
We encourage other companies to join in and be a sponsor, and I'm very, very sure that they'll find it worthwhile.
They say what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. But what makes one unbreakable? That courage to move forward. That desire for self-discovery, to surpass new limits. That grit to evolve and emerge anew. Now, brave the new world and discover this new chapter. Defy the odds. Live outside your limits. Break the wheel of what's expected. After all, it's not the destination that matters. It's the journey. You are unbreakable. The difference between mankind and other species is our ingenuity. Throughout history, we've learned to invent and reinvent for the better. From the way we learn, transact, consume, care, and serve, adversity allows us to transform. Sure, industries will live and die. Life will change, but it beckons us to begin again, to live again. Just open your eyes and see.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. God Almighty, our sure strength and hope, at all times, especially in moments of difficulties, we always recognize and thank you for the love and goodness that you constantly allow us to experience. Even in this pandemic crisis, you prove that your power is greater than any trial that may come to us. In becoming one of us, you show the dignity of labor by working with your own hands, leaving us a noble pattern to follow. We thank you for blessing us with manifold talents and gifts, which are expressions of your excellence and creativity. Grant us your grace to see the value of working, to discover and be grateful for all our abilities. Remind us always to see the brighter side of things and to recognize your invisible hand working in our lives. Make us always strong in the face of new challenges. May this help us grow constantly in making decisions and actions. Fill us with vigor and enthusiasm in doing our task. Impart to us your knowledge in all our endeavors. Let the spirit of cooperation and concern unite us in all our undertakings. May we grow in our relationship with one another as we journey towards our goals. With hearts full of thanksgiving, we send this prayer to you, who is always at work in us, with the Father and the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Please all rise for the Philippine National Anthem.
Welcome everyone to Asia BPM Forum 2021. This is the BPO Shared Services event. And what a year it has been. It's been difficult, but this industry has shown itself to be resilient beyond all measure. While other industries, formerly the fashionable pogo industry has left the country, it seems. Such a disappointment it has been, but BPO Shared Services has really shined in every way. Their CSR and support activities to their own employees and to the nation has been exemplary, and they've continued to grow surprisingly and continue producing high quality jobs and even bringing in displaced people, so helping people from other industries that have lost their jobs. So it's really been a tremendous support to the nation's economy and to the prosperity of Filipinos. So this almost should be a celebration type of event. So really glad to have you for Asia BPM Forum 2021. Let's go. Okay, to get going, we have our friend Victor Ali Wallace, who's Vice President of CRM for PLDT with us. And he is in a very special place as, you know, the guy who oversees the CRM, or what I call the BPO / shared services industry. And really is, spearheading the industry and keeping people working, and had a hell of a time early on in the pandemic. And I think for a lot of it, making sure people could work from home or hotels or God knows wherever they were working from. So good work, Victor, keeping everybody working. And we'll have a good start to our show today with him. Please welcome Victor, and glad to have you, Victor.
Hi, Richard. Thanks for having me. It's great to see you, although virtually. And then good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And I guess, welcome to the 2021 Asia BPM Summit. It's really crazy to think it's already been a year since the last in-person Asia BPM Summit. Now, ironically, that was the last face-to-face industry-related event that I attended. I believe that was March 5th of 2020. Now, things were starting to peak in terms of the virus spreading, and I was already quite concerned, being at that event. I remember being paranoid about meeting and shaking hands with a foreign delegate who had mentioned that they took several routes from Hong Kong to make it into the Philippines because of the travel restriction issues. It's crazy to think of that fear and paranoia I had that day would extend over a year until now. And it's really unfortunate that it's starting up again because of the increased number of cases taking place in the country. So I'm really hoping that our government and the private sector can really address the vaccination distribution so we can somewhat get back to normal. But anyways, fast forward to another year. Here we are. Spirits aren't quite the same, but we're more confident. We're better educated, experienced in dealing with the pandemic. Since we have dealt with the uncharted territories, it's really made us stronger, more successful in doing whatever it took to adapt and survive. And not only as individuals, but for the economy and the entire BPM industry vertical. So from a partner and telco perspective, I'm truly proud to have been working with all of you throughout the transitions to the new norm and these work from home scenarios. So we're grateful that all of you maneuvered well. You even grew despite some of the challenges. Other industry verticals were just decimated, but the BPMs, the BPOs, we really held up. So kudos to all of you. On behalf of PLDT Enterprise, we'd just like to congratulate and thank the Asia BPM delegates for the continuous growth and success in the industry, despite all these challenges that the pandemic brought to all of us. So we at PLDT Enterprise, we're committed to continuously supporting the industry's growth, your needs, future requirements. We will adapt with you. So we want to reassure the industry that we're aware of the concerns, the requirements, especially the paradigm shift to working from home. Fortunately, a lot of our BPO clients' businesses are in fact growing, and the permanent work from home agent is real and here to stay beyond vaccinations. We're seeing a lot of hybrid models that are going to take place. So we understand that there was minimal growth this 2020 compared to the previous heydays, but we're confident that the increase in our clients' requests should warrant a stronger and more fruitful 2021 for everybody. I've had companies reach out to me saying, Vic, we need to prepare 5,000 and 10,000 plus home installs for their work from home agent requirements. I've also noticed a lot of M&As in our space. Looks like competition will get more fierce amongst a lot of the bigger players as they continue to buy up smaller BPOs. So let's see if this trend really continues. Now, in order for us to better support the BPM industry, PLDT is investing in between 88 billion and 92 billion in CapEx for 2021 to expand and strengthen our fixed, wireless, and DC ICT capabilities. We're confident that we'll have a direct positive impact on your business. Our goal is to continuously enable the BPM industry to gain a larger segment of your global market share and drive more business to the Philippines as opposed to other nearshore or offshore options for the sector's wide variety of clients. So we understand that telco capabilities are a major discussion point with your end clients. Should it be necessary, we'd be more than happy to join you in your RFPs or client discussions to provide more insight and confidence into our country's network infrastructure. So whatever we can do to help drive more business this way, we'll do our best to help you guys address that. Now, in regards to our network this 2021, we've grown our fiber footprint to over 450,000 kilometers nationwide, impacting your experience and the reach in the provincial areas, as well as providing a number of redundancy and resiliency tools for your mission critical lines of business and connectivity. So some of our key initiatives that you should look forward to include our copper to fiber migration, which should be 75% done by Q4 of this year. We've been sending out EDMs regarding the DSL to fiber transitions for the affected clients throughout the process. So hopefully in the event that applies to you, you've seen what we've done. This is really going to significantly increase the speed and performance of our respective PLDT DSL clients. We're also increasing the enterprise group's field resources by 35% to help address the influx of work from home installs. We'll be rolling out more fiber lines. We've set up about 500,000 ports nationwide to serve the growing demand for high-speed internet throughout 2021. We covered about 8 million homes, passed by in the first half of 2020, up 8% from year end of 2019. So the total number of available fiber-powered ports increased 5% to almost 4 million, with 1.6 million available for new customers. Now, SPART has secured close to 1,500 permits to build more and more cell towers and speed up its goal to enhance customer experience across the country. And this definitely includes our 5G and LTE initiatives. So the new towers will be built in Metro Manila and of course the provinces like Albay, Aurora, Batangas, Bulacan, Cagayan, Camarines Sur, Cavite, Laguna, you name it, we're going to be there. And we've actually tapped six tower companies to help us with the initial batch of 180 to 200 common towers. And this is going to be pursuant to the government's common tower policy. So, you know, we hope that all these initiatives are really going to help you guys out. We're not perfect, but we're working tirelessly to get out there and fully acknowledge all of your areas of need. And with this, we're really hoping to help and support the BPMs. And we hope next year's summit can be back to normal and in person at the Marriott again. You know, it's always great to see Richard, Rebecca, and Bruce, all of you guys out there. But at least we can say there's always a silver lining and a positive outcome in bad times. And I think, you know, the positive outcome here is that we're all still here. We're all healthy. Our jobs and companies are up and running. And the IT BPM, BPO groups have been an important pillar to our economy. It's definitely been vital to our nation. So thank you all for your individual contributions to the industry and to the country. We look forward to working with you further. And again, on behalf of PLDT Enterprise, thank you, Richard, Rebecca, Asia BPM Summit. Mabuhay. Stay safe.
All right. Thank you very much, Victor. That's very interesting that you guys are doing so much. Keep up the great work. And that's your beard is very fashionable, I must say, very suitable for these times we live in. So let's get going with the event. Well, let's get going with our first speaker. It is Charito Plaza, the high-flying Director General of PEZA, the Philippine Economic Zone Authority, and has been for some time a real proponent of international companies doing fantastic work in Philippines and hiring Filipinos. Please welcome Charito Plaza of PEZA. Welcome, Charito.
May I greet the Asia CEO Forum Chairman, my good friend Richard Mills, and his wife Becky, our distinguished guest, ladies and gentlemen. A warmest good morning to everyone. It is an honor and a privilege to be invited as one of top presenters for today's event, as this showcases the interminable efforts and actions done by various sectors in keeping our country's economy afloat amidst the ongoing crisis we are all facing, the COVID-19 pandemic. In line with the Asia BPM Forum 2021 tagline, crises don't kill us, they just make us stronger. And I am pleased to share that the Philippine Economic Zone Authority, or PEZA, has taken advantage of this crisis and turned threats into opportunities, thus performing its mandate at its best promoting investment, creating employment, and generating exports, as it continues to be the top export-oriented investment promotion agency of the Philippines. As of November 2020, PESA operates a total of 410 economic zones nationwide, with 290 IT parks and centers, 70 are in manufacturing, 22 in agro-industrial parks, 19 in tourism ecozones, 4 public ecozones, and 3 medical tourism. Likewise, for the year 2020, PESA generated 95 billion pesos of investments, with 300 projects registered as of October 2020. PESA has also generated 45.085 billion US dollars of exports, creating 1,541,259 jobs. Because of this enabled PESA to remit to the national government an accumulated amount of 24.097 billion pesos from 1995 to 2020. Just this January 2021, a total of 24 projects were approved by the PESA board, which is seen to employ 5,601 workers and in turn produce 11.308 billion of investments. In fact, this is 139% higher from the 4.726 billion pesos investments that PESA generated in January 2020. Of course, we have our registered companies to thank for their continuous operations despite the pandemic. Based on the zone reports for the period of February 15 to 2021, 88% or 2,668 companies nationwide are operational, with about 1,174,857 workers, or 79% working under either work from home arrangements or the skeletal forces. On top of it, out of 2,571 companies in Luzon, 2,229 companies are continuously operating in the Visayas, 393 companies are operational out of 409, and in Mindanao, 46 of 47 companies are operating. This is indeed a success for our countrymen, proving that despite facing the new normal, the Philippines is still an investment haven. We in PESA will continue to pursue our mandate and do our best in harnessing Philippine investments' competitiveness and strive to make the Philippines a self-reliant, self-sustaining, and resource-generating country. With PESA's contributions over the years, our agency has become known for its best practices among economic zones worldwide. PESA has received various recognitions locally and abroad for its contribution to the ease of doing business in the Philippines. The U.S. Department of State, for example, recently lauded PESA in its 2020 investment climate statement, saying, "The business environment is notably better within the special economic zones, especially those available for export businesses, operated by the Philippine Economic Zone Authority, known for its regulatory transparency, no red tape policy, and one-stop shop services for investors." Further, the Philippine Statistics Authority reported in the last quarter of 2020 that only PESA among the IPAs or investment promotion agencies of the country registered a year-on-year growth in foreign investments. Commitments during the July to September period has 20.3 billion pesos, which is up to 97% from the 10.3 billion pesos last year. On the other hand, the IFC World Bank continuously cited that only PEZA has the best practice among the economic zones worldwide, showing that the Philippines has shown dramatic improvements in investment climate. And in terms of employment generation, according to the cost-benefit analysis or CBA of the National Economic and Development Authority or NEDA from 2016 to 2018, last year, registered business enterprises under PEZA made an average of 90.3% of all exports and has also acquired the most imports, 92.7% to 97%. And with PEZA's accomplishments and recognitions, we continue to perform our mandate as we have also crafted our new 10-point programs and special projects known as the PEZA Transformational Roadmap, anchored with our Think Global and Act Local worldview. These will not only promote investments in ecozones, but to collaborate with other government bodies as well to address the efficiency factors that expanding multinational companies are considering in making their investment decisions. As we all embark to the new normal, let us all strive to execute our duties and responsibilities as an act of selfless service, not just to our respective organizations, but to our fellow countrymen and to our beloved country, the Philippines. Because I fervently believe that we can find ourselves in the service of others. A heart that loves is always healthy, and a heart that cares is forever strong. Again, thank you very much for having me here virtually, and I wish the forum all the success. Maraming salamat po. Galing Pinas, galing Pinas. Mabuhay tayong lahat.
Thank you very much, Charito Plaza. That was an interesting story, and we look forward to hearing more from you in the future. And continued success with everything you're doing. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Mark Linsell. His title is quite an impressive one, Global CEO of the English region for Transcom. And Transcom is known as a very tech-heavy and analytics operation. So they've done good work here over quite a few years. Mark oversees US, Canada, the UK, Philippines, and I think even Colombia and perhaps some other places. So quite a large region, both in size and geography. And so quite a good story. We're really pleased to have him. So please welcome Mark Linsell of Transcom. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you so much, Richard, and thank you to your team for having me here today. It's very much appreciated. The story of Transcom and the story of the last 12 months or so, it's been quite a 51 or 52 weeks from, I think, many of us that are based here in the Philippines. I'll have to say, if I go back to March, the weekend of March 14 and 15 of last year, I didn't really expect all the things that happened to happen. I don't think anybody really could have planned in any great detail for what was likely to occur. But I have to say it's been an experience, particularly here in the Philippines, where I think that organizations like Transcom have been able to contribute positively to supporting our Filipino folks. For us particularly, actually, we were very intentional in our approach to look after people. Indeed, on that Monday, I think it was March 15 or 16, if memory serves me correctly, when Transcom, when when we heard in Transcom that Metro Manila was going into a complete lockdown and the transportation system was closing down at midnight, we took the decision to make sure every single one of our folks got home by that time safely. So we actually closed our centres early. Well, we did more than that. We actually made sure that everybody went home with money in their pockets. So we advanced people's salaries, not just for that pay week, but also for the following pay week as well. And we did so knowing or believing that actually it was super important to care for our folks, knowing that the Philippines particularly is a cash-based society, that people would be in a position to be able to support their family members if needed. And I think that was a crucial first step for us as an organization to maintain that connection and that trust with our people. Super important. And over the subsequent weeks and months, as we learned more about the lockdowns and understood more about what that meant for BPOs in particular, we were then able to adjust and continue to support both our clients from all over the globe and our people. But by placing our people at the heart of our strategy, I think what that served to prove was the integrity of our organization and the importance that our people play in our performance as a business. And I think our clients appreciated that, quite honestly. I have to say that what we saw in the first sort of few months, I think was clearly an unclear picture. But as we stepped through it, we started to figure out ways that we could actually start to grow our organization, and indeed we did. In fact, as a region in 2020, we beat our top line revenue numbers by close to 20% and our bottom line EBITDA by more than that in terms of percentage terms. And consider that in the midst of a global pandemic, consider that in the midst of really quite stern lockdown conditions. And I think in many ways, that's testament to the Philippines and Filipinos. The malasakit that I think we showed as an organization was returned tenfold by our folks. And the flexibility and, dare I say it, the bravery that our employees, our team members displayed was second to none. And let's not forget, in 2020, we started the year with Taal volcano exploding. We then went into lockdowns, and then we ended the year with a typhoon in the NCR, which was second only to Ondoy some 12 years ago. And through that, we still managed to maintain our business, to grow our business, and to retain the talent that we have here in the Philippines. So just a tremendous year in many ways for Transcom. And I think, a pivotal moment for the BPO industry in this part of the world. I would say that it clearly wasn't without its challenges, and not everything went our way. There were undoubtedly some bumps in the road, and even more recently we've encountered some. And the critical thing for an organization like ours, and for a leader like me, is our ability to learn and to adapt. That ability, I think, is critical in these times. The lockdowns and the support that we provided for our folks was expensive. I mean, I think we spent well in excess of $7-8 million US in supporting folks in the Philippines. Whether that's the network of shuttle vans that we had to put in place, the hotel accommodation that we housed folks in, whether it was the extra allowances, the hazard pay that we provided, you name it, all of that has come at an expense. And even now, we test our folks with antigen tests every 14 days. We're still running many of the sort of point-to-point shuttles as we struggle with some of the the transportation issues here, and so that cost continues. And I think this is the important point for me and for Transcom and our industry, is that the Philippines is still a country and a destination where our clients want to invest, and that's something that we're continuing to see. What's probably true today, though, is that where we saw historically this sort of approach around mega sites in very specific locations, we are without a doubt seeing the pivot to work at home being one which is sustainable for the long term. Thankfully, with the investments in the telco network here in the Philippines, we're starting to see much better sustainable broadband at home, which will obviously help facilitate this further. And indeed, one of our current projects at the moment is actually to launch our first hub and spoke model for work at home out of Davao, where we've been operating for some time with a business unit that we acquired in 2018 named Awesome OS. But this will be our first physical launch of work at home in a new geo within the Philippines, and that we see sort of being our template for future work at home launches. And indeed, we're already looking to target other cities, particularly in Luzon at the moment, where we'll be launching hub and spoke operations quite soon. And I think that's probably the most sort of will be one of the most lasting legacies of the last year or so, in as much as the 7,160 islands or so, if I get that correct, of the Philippines. I think historically BPOs have sort of congregated around both the tier 1 and tier 2, possibly tier 3 cities. Work at home gives us really an opportunity to tap into the talents in all parts of the archipelago, provided obviously that we've got the technology and the infrastructure to support that. But I think the ability to have a truly distributed workforce within the Philippines is something we're super excited about, and something that we're really looking forward to as we pivot through 21 into 2022. But thank you, Richard. Thank you, team. Thank you for having us here. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to discuss these topics and share some of our experiences in Transcom in the last year or so. Thank you.
Mark, there's a lot of talk about work from home, and I know everyone has done this. Do you think it's going to become a permanent fixture and or not? And which, in either case, what kind of percentage do you think of your employees might continue working from home?
Yeah, well, I think it's a great question, and it's still an area that we're exploring, quite frankly. I mean, let's be frank, let's be honest. One of the reasons why we built bricks and mortar in the Philippines as an industry was to be able to provide BCP for our clients in the event of extreme weather events and power outages and the like. And those challenges haven't gone away. Let's just be very honest with each other. But do I think that work at home is here to stay? Absolutely. I think to some extent we will be guided by our clients. I can tell you now that we have some global multinational organizations that are intent on maintaining 100% work at home in the Philippines. There are others that are perhaps a little bit more conservative and are looking for perhaps a more balanced split between bricks and mortar and work at home. And then inevitably we have some clients who are 100% bricks and mortar for a variety of reasons. But I do think that the model has undoubtedly changed, and that is something that in large respect, both industry and organizations like ours have got to take account of.
Okay. And now, Mark, you have kind of a global, or not kind of a global perspective. You do have a global perspective. What are you seeing are some of the trends that are happening in the industry? I understand you're starting an operator, getting an operation going in Colombia, for instance.
Yeah.
Is Philippines still doing okay, or what do you think are the trends?
Well, I know that clients are still willing to invest in the Philippines and explore new delivery locations within the Philippines. They absolutely are. But if we look at global trends today, I would say, and it's true of not just of the Philippines, but of other sort of similar delivery locations globally. Some clients, I think global clients particularly, found a high concentration in some delivery locations, very problematic through the key stages of the lockdowns. And as a consequence of those learnings, I think what we're seeing is a further diversification of footprint. That doesn't mean to say that the Philippines will necessarily lose out, but I do think that the Philippines will be complemented with other either nearshore or offshore locations. I think that is absolutely a trend that I'm seeing for sure.
Okay. All right. And Mark, now you've been in Philippines for the past 12 years, as I recall, and seem to talk about how great the place is and Filipinos and everything. What's your longer term plans here? Mark, you want to keep going here for forever, or what's your story?
Well, forever's a long time. But no, I'm absolutely committed to this part of the world. You know, I moved here a single man, fell in love with the Philippines, fell in love with a Filipina, have a 16-year-old son. My family is super important to me for sure, but you know, my commitment to the people I work with is equally strong, and the opportunities to develop both as a leader and an industry professional, they still very much exist in the Philippines. So I'm very much looking forward to the next few years. You know, helping to grow this industry and hopefully helping to continue to grow the organization that I represent.
Okay, very good, Mark. Well, it's a good story, so keep it up, and we'll look forward to seeing what the future comes, but it's exciting.
Thank you, Richard. Really appreciate it.
Our next speaker, we welcome Parikshat Nagpal. He is the Chief Operating Officer for both Philippines and Australia for StarTech, a premier global operation, and he oversees, diverse operations, not only Philippines and Australia, but across the world for major clients in Africa, Canada, the US, and other countries. And it's interesting because he spent a lot of his career in Philippines, first coming in 2006 with a number of different organizations, or I should say the organizations changed. He didn't. He kept on working for the same one, but really has made a big contribution to the development of the industry here. Teleperformance, American Express, Genpact, and other companies he worked for. Please welcome Parikshat Nagpal, Chief Operating Officer, Philippines and Australia of StarTech. Welcome, Parikshat.
Hey, thank you, Richard. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Fantastic to be here and fantastic to have this opportunity to talk to this audience. I wish this was like the good old days when we used to do this in person, sit next to each other, shake hands, hug each other. But obviously, times have changed. The last 12 months have been the strangest of our lives, I guess, not just for us in the Philippines, globally. And I think what we've probably experienced and learned in the last 12 months or so has been a sum total of all of the years prior to that, because I guess the learnings are amazing. The way to move forward is something that we're still figuring out. But before I get into StarTech and I get into more of how we've approached everything and how we are moving forward as an organization, just to give you the audience a quick background on StarTech. StarTech is a New York Stock Exchange listed entity. We are a company that's been in existence for approximately 30 years. started off as a back office, back of the room operation way back in the day in the 90s in the US, and then grew into a BPO operation and eventually making a mark and expanding operations into different parts of the world. We've been in the Philippines since 2008. And in 2018, we had a strategic change in our vision and in our direction with a merger with an organization called Aegis, which was then headquartered out of India. Aegis used to previously be in Philippines, but that entity was hived off, so nothing to do with that previous entity. And the two companies came together to bring back the Philippines, US, and nearshore operation to the overall organization. The combined entity today is roughly around 45,000 people spread across 13 countries and approximately 50 different delivery centers. In the Philippines, to be more specific, we are about 5,000 odd people being servicing clients here since, like I said, 2008 out of 4 different delivery centers. So we've got 2 delivery centers in Metro Manila, one in Makati along Bundia, which is our headquarters, and then another one in the Frontera Verde area in Ortigas East in Pasig, which is a site that we've been at since 2015. And other than that, we have 2 provincial sites, one in the Angeles City area, and then one in the Visayas in Iloilo, again, where we've been since 2015. It's a fantastic site. And then just a little bit more, I think strategically, we are very clear on our way of building and managing sites. We tend to go with standalone buildings, unlike some of our partners or our competitors who like to do a mix of standalone as well as malls or in mixed office buildings. What we found is the standalone buildings serve us well. And it wasn't a strategy as clearly for COVID, but it turned out to be a tremendous asset when we got, when we all encountered the pandemic about a year ago. And being in the standalone buildings where we are either 100% tenant, or in the case of a Makati, like an 85% tenant, we have most of the floors -1, really helped us. It gave us the ability to control a lot of the things we wanted to control, to be able to build a very robust health and safety network to have our employees come in and work. So just as an example, when we got hit with COVID, and I'm sure most of my colleagues would have experienced the same thing. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody saw transportation would disappear. Nobody knew that IATF will come up with a new rule every day that would come from left field, and you'd be wondering what to do about it. So I can tell you, in about a year ago, on March 13th, when the news broke, we had come out of an earnings call and we were thinking, hey, this is going to be the most strategic year of our lives. And lo and behold, 24 hours later, we were firefighting, trying to figure out how to get people to come into our offices, how to keep the operation going, how to keep moving forward. But what you're not prepared for, I guess, is where you start to get innovative. About a year ago, in March, I suddenly had 4 hotel operations running. All 4 of my sites were converted to significant areas, were converted to sleep areas. We were buying mattresses in bulk. We were installing washing machines. We were installing shower cabins because suddenly people could not move about. Work from home was being developed. We had a pretty decent solution, but it wasn't as robust because we've never needed work at home the way we need it today. And our clients in the Philippines did not ask for it. So while we were parallelly working on our work at home deployment, sending out computers to our agents, making sure they have the stable internet connections that we need, we also needed to do something to continue the operation. Because at StarTech, we have a very simple approach. We call it the balancing act, right? You have a balanced scorecard, you have a balanced diet, you have a balancing act. For us, our employees, our shareholders, and our clients, all 3 pillars we have to look at equally. From an employee standpoint, the health and safety is most paramount and the most critical thing that we went after. From a client standpoint, it was clear. Business continuity is what they needed, what they demanded, and what we needed to give them. And from a shareholder perspective, you could not lose sight of revenue and profitability, because at the end of the day, if you don't have the revenue coming in and the profitability coming in, you won't be able to service your employees or your clients. So I think at the very beginning itself, we were very clear of how we wanted to approach the pandemic scenario. And within a fortnight, we had multiple hotels booked, people living in those hotels near sites being transported in and out of the site. We had over 500 people living in our different sites. living and working out of the site. And then we had started to build our work from home operation. What we saw literally in March was a pretty decent blip to our business. We lost a decent chunk of our revenue. And we also had tremendous client partners, some of them who stepped up to pay us the full invoice despite not being able to deliver to what they had locked with us. We had some other partners who stood up to support us, to help us with the cost that we were incurring and other things. So it's been a tremendous factor. One other thing that helps StarTech is we are very travel light in the Philippines. Our travel and hospitality verticals in the Philippines are almost non-existent, which used to seem like a big deterrent to me before going into this scenario. But then suddenly when this scenario played out, having a lot of e-commerce, telco, cable and media clients suddenly was to our advantage, because all of these clients saw a tremendous boom to their business. And suddenly we were obviously encountering challenges because their volumes were going through the roof and we had to step up to act. By April, we were, I think, probably at our worst, as most all of us were dealing with a scenario which none of us had dealt with. But very soon after that, I think as a collective team, we came together, meeting every day, putting plans in place, ensuring business continuity, giving out allowances to employees, giving them accommodation, giving them the support to get transported to the site. And by May, I think we were back to about 80% of where we were supposed to be as a plan for the year. So it's been a rough journey. Even though we got back to where we needed to in May, it did not obviously change the trajectory. Thereafter, Q3, Q4 have been tough. I think one of the things that we've all realized is you can never be prepared for a scenario like this, no matter how much BCP testing or how much BCP planning you do. There's nothing you can do about what we all encountered. As we go forward into 2021, it's a very exciting time. We've seen some of our clients grow 200-300%. We are in the thick of some significant ramps with some of our clients. Our priority, as I said at the beginning, is always to ensure a good living and a stable job for our employees. So our approach to this has been of a health and safety, 100% health and safety environment, giving our folks the ability to come into work or work from home, and then be able to continue to grow with our clients. So what we are seeing as we've gone into 2021, the scenarios have improved a tad bit with the opening up of the market a little bit. Transportation continues to be a challenge. We augment that with transportation services that we've been providing to our employees since June of last year. However, what I foresee is that we will continue to employ a significant population of the country and thereby supporting families of more than 5,000 to 6,000 Filipinos, which is again a very primary objective to us, to be able to support our employees, to be able to give them that stable employment, that they are able to take a paycheck back home and support the 3, 4, 5, whatever is the number that they support back home. And thereby impacting the lives of 25,000, 30,000 Filipinos. And I guess at a macro level, that's the fourth pillar of our business. How do we give back to community? It starts at home. We give back to the community first by taking care of our employees, and then obviously going a step beyond and seeing what we can do over and above through our initiatives. But essentially, I think 2021 looks like a year which will still be marred with challenges. It's not something that has changed dramatically. I think we will still continue to see challenges and we'll continue to face different scenarios. However, I think we've left the worst behind us at least. And BPO, I think, is the true middle class creator, the true industry that changes the lives of people. I saw that in India in the first part of my career from 1998 to 2006. And from 2006, I was able to come here, replicate some of that, and see how it's changed the country around us, the buildings, the fast food, the retail. It's an amazing story. And I think the government needs to back us a lot more, support us a lot more. I think as an industry, we do a lot for each other. Even though we are direct competitors, I would say one of the best things I've seen through this period is the groups that we have, whether it's through CCAP or smaller groups, and how we've collaborated with each other. So I would say, competition aside, it's a brotherhood, a sisterhood, a family. And I think BPO is really here to stay, and to keep the industry resilient is one of the key aims any government should have, and help us continue to support the Filipino economy. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, well, really, really nice to talk with you. I know it's, at least we can do it on the screen. Our next speaker is Joseph Worker. He is the managing director of Penn Brothers. And this is one of these, we're still seeing a lot of high quality startup organizations, like with this one with Joseph. So they've really done a great job serving startups, SME companies across the world, helping them build teams and grow. And companies you might have heard of: Ninja Van, Carousel, Lala Move, and so on. These kinds of real fast growing organizations. So Joseph has been in Philippines for 8 years. So for a young guy, this means a hell of a commitment to the country, I would say. But anyway, look forward to hearing Joseph Worker. Please welcome him, Managing Director of Penn Brothers. Welcome, Joseph.
Thank you very much indeed, Richard and team. And magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Ako ay si Joseph, taga UK ako, pero nakatira ako sa Pilipinas 8 taon na. Mahal ko ang Pilipinas. Konti lang na Tagalog ang alam ko. Maraming salamat sa pasensya niyo sa akin. Ipagpatuloy natin sa English. I couldn't help myself. So first, thank you very much indeed for the privilege of this invitation to speak alongside some truly incredible people. Quick intro. That's a very flattering intro there from Richard, but I'll do one myself as well. I'm half Welsh, half Dutch, which is quite an odd mixture. But I grew up in the UK, hence the probably quite annoying Harry Potter style accent coming across the screen. My past life was music and sport, strangely enough. But I then stumbled into public speaking and business development, which led to a work trip to Manila back in 2013. And from there, typical expat story, I'm afraid. I fell madly in love with everything that the Philippines has to offer, in particular Filipino culture, values, and sense of humor. So I decided to make the Philippines my home, and I'm extremely grateful that I've been allowed to do so. So consequently, I dedicate my time, energy, and passions into things that create impact here in the Philippines, and specifically in my case, employment and sustainability. So I wear a couple of hats. Well, first, Penn Brothers, an employment platform building remote teams for global companies in the Philippines. I'm also the ambassador of SOS Children's Villages and co-founder of Humble, a platform and community that aims to make circular living the new normal. But why am I talking today? Well, Penn Brothers is in the industry of building remote teams in the Philippines for startups, SMEs, and actually more recently, larger companies from the US, Singapore, Australia, and Europe. And we provide a range of services relating to HR and employment that allow companies to build and scale highly skilled teams in the Philippines without going through the process of setting up their own entity. And I've been asked to share a little bit about what we've been up to at Penn Brothers in a nutshell. So we were actually shifting to offer our service through technology and with a more remote setup even before COVID. Then the pandemic hit and of course sped this up in a big way. And this is seen in how the pandemic is affecting this industry as a whole. Even though we believe it was already moving into this direction, it is now highly likely that remote teams are the future. And that question of why hire someone down the road from you in Singapore, London, New York, when you're going to manage and communicate with them via Zoom or Google Meet anyway? It's now nearly exactly the same to hire that person in the Philippines, where the level of talent is honestly out of this world, but also happens to be considerably more affordable than it would be to hire that same team in the Western world. So short term, we saw some clients struggle, which meant we struggled, but medium and long term, the outlook is very bright indeed for this industry in our eyes. So what we're now focusing on is building a product that allows our clients to find the best possible people for their team that they can then run completely remotely through technology, while ensuring on the other side that their team members are still going through a brilliant employee experience and part of the culture of both the client and Penn Brothers. So I only have a few minutes, so I just briefly touch on 3 things that we decided to prioritize when it comes to adapting our approach for how we would utilize technology and ensure culture still remained at the heart of everything that we do. So the first was communication and data. People won't send a calendar invite for a quick clarification, right? Which would normally have just been done by walking over to somebody's desk. So we needed to provide an easy communication platform, accessible anywhere and anytime. And I think meetings have also changed. They're now more frequent, but shorter. And there's daily kickoff meetings or huddles or sprints, whatever you may call them, so that alignment is there and everyone gets that interaction, but for shorter timeframes so that we prevent fatigue. Then when it came to data, we've actually got less control when our teams are working from home. And we therefore implemented a few measures such as providing cloud storage with a strict cloud-only policy, remote desktop access using top security tools, and backup connection options like mobile Wi-Fi and access to nearby co-working spaces. The second point was culture and engagement. So of course, it's crucial to keep teams engaged with management and indeed each other at a time like this. And we wanted to make everyone understand that they are part of the bigger vision. And we shifted to OKRs from KPIs actually to aid this purpose, ensuring that everyone understands the values of the company and where we're going, and then how their function fits into that bigger picture. Another way that we tried to encourage engagement was through online events like this. But town halls, for example, are more important than ever before. And we actually now have alternating town halls, one for serious updates and numbers, and then the other for morale boosting activities. And the whole team is currently undergoing a 4-week virtual team building project as well. The final thing was mental health. And it has never been more important to focus on mental health than now. People have been through a huge amount, and they often experience it at different times. So this is difficult to manage, and often it's actually tricky to spot. So we do what we call virtual floor walks, constantly checking in with people, both our clients' teams and also our own teams. And I think we've learned this the hard way, but people will not always come forward when they're experiencing a challenge. So we needed to proactively find who it may be and then figure out ways to help them. So finally then providing them with support. Could be a professional or simply mentors within the team. But I think creating an environment where it is okay to not be okay was really the top priority for us. I personally believe that psychological safety is one of the most critical things we should be focusing on as leaders, even more so now when there are so many other things at play. So ensuring we supported our people first and foremost was, and still is, the thing that we prioritized above all else. That's my time's up. So I hope I was able to give you a sneak peek into some of the things that we're up to at Penn Brothers. And perhaps you heard 1 or 2 ideas you can actually relate to or even want to implement yourself. Please do feel free to reach out to me directly to discuss anything further. It really would be a pleasure. Contact details, I'm sure, are with the team at Asia CEO Forum, but I'm very easy to reach via LinkedIn. Maraming salamat sa inyong lahat.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Thanks, Joseph. And now a special speaker for us. I think it's the first time we have had him speak. Rajiv Dan, who is the Regional Vice President for the Asia Pacific region of TELUS International. This is a great success, this organization for Philippines. I know they have upwards of 16 or more thousand people. Just been a fantastic success, especially on the employee engagement side, as well as CSR. They're the most recent winner of the CSR Company of the Year award. And like I said, very highly respected. So please welcome Rajiv Dan of TELUS International. Glad to have you, Rajiv.
Good morning, and I hope everybody is doing well. 2020, I believe, has been one of the most challenging years in modern history. However, with challenges come opportunity. Opportunity to test and amplify our fundamentals which have made us successful over the years. Since the start of the pandemic, the senior leadership team at TELUS International Philippines put in thousands of hours to ensure a safe working environment for our team members and ensure continued service delivery for our valued partner clients. We deployed thousands of computers and equipment across Metro Manila and surrounding areas, innovating our business model and disrupting it with comprehensive work from anywhere program. However, today, I will talk to you about 3 tightly knit initiatives that have guided our path over the years and help ensure our success. The first of which is our culture value chain. Our guiding principle, which is a proven formula where a strong corporate culture and employee engagement equates to the ability to innovate, achieve higher customer satisfaction scores, and ultimately deliver on a more robust financial performance, which in turn helps us to give back to the communities where we work, serve, and raise our families. This principle has been the foundation of everything we delivered over the years, including proof of our ability to replicate, sustain, and even enhance our brand in an outsourcing model. During the pandemic, our culture value chain kept us tethered to the fundamentals started with taking care of our team members. In 2020, we ensured that our team members continued to be the focus of our efforts to strengthen our organization, which leads me to my second point. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we created several initiatives that would help us ensure our business continuity while prioritizing the health and safety of our team members. To continuously make our caring culture felt, we launched #StrongerTogether, a campaign to ensure that team members were fully engaged, connected, and more importantly, cared for. The campaign consisted of various engagement activities and programs for our digital savvy team members and a complement of health, financial, and learning initiatives. Needless to say, all of these engagement activities were held virtually, but we understood we needed to go even further. And that's why we also initiated our CARE program, a set of comprehensive tools and resources to offer safety, health, and life support for our team members during a time where doubts were in abundance. Our Health CARE program, backed by a Health, Wellness, and Safety Committee, and with the guidance of our local and global guidelines, along with our internal medical and infectious disease medical expert, ensured that our team members who unfortunately tested positive or were identified via contact tracing requiring self-quarantine had a support system readily available for them during their 14-day quarantine journey. This support system included TELUS International Philippines providing the impacted team members with medical kits, periodic touch points with their direct managers, senior leaders, and the medical staff, and at the end of the quarantine period, a meal to share with the family. We also set up a helpline for all our team members to call toll-free. This helpline had registered nurses and doctors who would answer questions specific to COVID-19 and provide support and advice on the much-needed mental health matters. All these efforts combined were highly valued and appreciated by our team members. In December, we received an outstanding score of 92% for the second year in a row in our global engagement survey carried out by Concentric, a number dear and near to my heart. Lastly, I'm very proud to share with this forum TELUS International Philippines' commitment to the local communities and the Philippines. Part of our corporate objective has always been to deliver on our We Give, Where We Live philosophy. And even when the conditions were difficult, our emphasis on giving back remained. In 2020, our team members donated north of 6,400 hours in volunteer work. Our teams were involved in converting their dedication to their communities to online initiatives, transporting more than 1,000 books, creating over 100 videos on classroom topics to support children's education and giving out free virtual trainings. And to top it off, donating 11 million pesos. Also, TELUS International Philippines is expanding outside Metro Manila and opening its first center in the province of Iloilo City in the coming days. We are setting up a new operation committed to bring the same culture, world-class facilities, and unique opportunities to the Ilonggos. This shows our commitment to the Philippines and our desire to continue positioning the country as a top destination for BPM business worldwide, collaborating with the country's economic development and the recovery efforts to overcome the pandemic. We have a very positive attitude towards 2021. Rebecca and Richard, thanks a lot for this opportunity. I wish everyone a very successful and safe year ahead.
Thank you very much, Rajiv Dan. And that was an interesting story of TELUS International. I understand the company's going to be traded publicly on a number of the world's great stock exchanges. So maybe buy some stock if you're interested. But no, a great company and a great story. Thank you, Rajiv. Okay, our next speaker is Celeste Illigan. She is Senior Vice President and Head of Global Marketing and Communications for SPI Global. This organization is one of the nation's premier global companies with operations across 6 countries and various continents, and really has been a tremendous success. So we're so pleased to have Celeste Illigan of SPI Global. Welcome, Celeste.
Hello everyone. I'm happy to be part of this event this morning together with all of you. 1 year ago, I was also here at this event sharing with you the roadmap of the IT BPM industry for the next 3 years. And I think it was only a week before the lockdowns. We were then recalling proudly how our industry was able to help propel the growth of our country's economy in the 2 decades of our existence. We talked about how our industry was able to change the face of Metro Manila and many other cities around the country like Cebu, Davao, Clark, Iloilo, and many others. We talked about how our industry was able to help improve millions of lives with the job opportunities that we were able to offer, and therefore also supported the growth of several other industries like transport, retail, housing, travel, and hospitality, not to mention the thousands of micro enterprises that our employees and BPO players supported throughout the country. We talked about how we were able to put the Philippines in the global map for professional services, supporting thousands of international big logos. We said that we generated billions of dollars of revenue every year, second only to OFW remittances that really help our economy grow. We talked about prospects for further growth in employment and revenue. And I showed you this slide that clearly shows a growth trend where we see employment generation of around 280,000 jobs by 2022 and reaching a revenue of $32 billion by 2022 as well. 1 year after, here's what actually happened. Comparing 2019 and 2020 numbers, you will see flat growth in the industry in 2020. We didn't gain more jobs. It's still 1.3 million. And revenue even dipped slightly to 26.2 billion. Our flat growth is, of course, because of the pandemic and because of the global recession. Due to the pandemic, recording a flat growth is actually an achievement in itself. And here's a slide that shows you the journey of our industry when the lockdown started until the end of the year. We are fortunate to have been included among the essential industries and therefore allowed to operate, but that needed us to pivot to a very different work model, which we have not done significantly before. We needed to do a blend of work from home and work at office. And in the first 2 months of the lockdowns, our productivity was only around 50% as an industry because we were still trying to stabilize our operations. But luckily, we were able to improve gradually, and by the end of 2020, as an industry, we were achieving 95% productivity. And we really acknowledge the support that we got from our partners in government. PEZA was a huge help in giving us the privilege to be able to work from home significantly. DTI was always there with the guidelines to make sure that movement of people and equipment was allowed, especially in the early days. And of course, the guidelines of DOLE and the DOH to make sure that our people working at the offices were also safe. And that was a lot of help. We are really grateful that despite of the pandemic, the IT BPM sector continues to be a pillar of our economy in terms of the government's priority of jobs creation and jobs retention. JobStreet said that we are the most active in terms of jobs recruitment. Looking at new investments, PEZA has recorded new investments into our space in 2020, regardless of the pandemic. And I think this is supported by information that comes from Lichu Properties that in terms of office space take-up, the BPO industry was also getting the majority of the share at almost 50%. To remain being a pillar of the economy, our industry association, IBPAP, leads with initiatives to make sure that our industry's competitiveness does not suffer regardless of the pandemic. It is widely recognized that the Filipino talent is the major factor to our continued competitiveness, and therefore the industry would like to ensure that the flow of talent to the industry as required by our players continue to be there. And therefore we had established partnerships with different government agencies in terms of holding career awareness fair so that people know that there are job opportunities waiting for them in the industry. With DOLE and OWA, we wanted to open a window for which returning overseas Filipinos will have an opportunity to be part of the BPM talent pool. And for the continued learning of our current workers in the industry, we have set up or opened an IT BPM school, and there are 3 specialized learning paths that they can choose from. And of course, considering the huge changes in our business landscape and the trends in the global market, we want to make sure that our workers are continued to be upskilled, and we have a number of programs patterned after the best in the region so that we can generate more talent at scale for our industry. A conducive and business-friendly environment is crucial to our industry players, and therefore as an industry, we make sure that we are proactive and are involved in the discussions both in the executive and legislative branches of government to make sure that our interests and points of view are taken into account. And there are a couple of very prominent matters that continue to be discussed in the industry circles, and you are very familiar with our guidelines on work from home, which we continue to discuss with PEZA. And another, of course, is CREATE. It's not been signed into law, but this early, we make sure that we are part of the industry where inputs for the IRR are being given to the right parties. Having recorded flat growth in 2020 and with COVID still there, where do we see our industry going in the next couple of years? And I share here a slide of our headcount and revenue projections. From a baseline of 1.3 million in 2020 in terms of headcount, we're looking at generating 130,000 jobs more when 2022 comes. And on the revenue side, we're looking at achieving more than 29 billion US dollars of revenue coming from what we met in 2020, which was 26.2 billion US dollars. To achieve our growth targets, we have identified 5 imperatives and initiatives that need to be put in place. Some of these have already been discussed in previous forums, as these are part of our roadmap, but there are a couple that have gained importance and prominence because of how they have affected our BPO industry. And I am talking about accelerating digital transformation that would need a massive push and support from both the executive and legislative branches of government to ensure the continued competitiveness of the country as a viable destination for investments. And the other is fortifying the IT BPM ecosystem. And again, this needs huge support in terms of ensuring that projects for telecommunications and transportation improvement will be fast-tracked. And this should not only be in the metropolis, but in other parts of the nation as well, so that the whole country can play host to many other opportunities in the BPO industry and other sectors as well. I have detailed slides on the 5 initiatives, but there's no need at this time to discuss them. But there's one that I'd like to highlight to you, as I think this is important. The IBPAP has participated in tripartite programs of government to support the vaccine rollout plan. And we have been working with GoNegosyo and ICTSI to be able to procure vaccines from AstraZeneca, Moderna, Novavax, and most recently Covaxin. With our participation, we hope that we can help support the government's efforts to bring back normalcy, hopefully, to the economy. That's where we are at and where we hope to be in the next 2 years. And I'm confident that we are going to get there. I've said this before and I'll say this again, that we don't leave our growth and welfare to chance. During this pandemic, we have responded to disruptions and challenges as one. And we show the best of who we are, regardless of the difficulties that we faced, regardless of the uncertainties that we feared, regardless of the setbacks that came our way. We remained strong and we continued to be a pillar of this economy. We held the economy afloat in probably the most trying situation in our economic history. And I'd like to use this forum to thank the people who have helped us with this remarkable achievement. To our partners in government, PEZA, DTI, BOI, DOLE, for their support. For the BPO players and players who have made sure that they operated and have kept the jobs in the country. But most of all, to the Filipino BPO workers with their grit and resilience in trying to make working from home work, regardless of the disruptions in their home life. I thank you and grateful for your continued work. And to Rebecca and Richard, thank you for this opportunity to speak with our industry. Salamat.
Thank you very much, Celeste. Yes, so keep up the great work you are doing for SPI Global and everybody there. I know it's great to hear the story of SPI. Filipinos flying around the world, bossing people around. It's a great story. So keep up the great work. Thanks again, Celeste. Well, welcome to our next speaker. He is the Executive General Manager and Head of Global Shared Services for QBE Insurance. And this is one of the leading company in the shared services space. And they really got kind of a high flyer, Samir is, to run this organization. This is his third posting in Philippines. He was previously here running large operations for JP Morgan, for Deutsche Bank, and he's had postings in other countries through the world. So really glad to have him back with his family and running just an organization with a really good reputation. So please welcome Samir Kumar of QBE Insurance. Welcome, Samir.
Thank you so much, Richard, and really delighted to be here in front of you, albeit digitally. Yeah, it's been a wonderful journey here in the Philippines, and last one here particularly has been quite interesting, I'm sure, like most of you. As far as QB is concerned, like many other companies in our industry, the pandemic, which started approximately about a year ago for us in the Philippines, did catch us by a big surprise as well. Yeah, despite our existing business continuity strategies that we had in place at that time, the lockdown was something we hadn't foreseen, and it did threaten our operations on the ground. But I'm really proud to say that the teams we had here pulled through this wonderfully well, and everybody worked together very efficiently to enable our employees to work from home first, and then be able to continue to support our customers in the best possible way we could do from a work from home setup. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about those circumstances, how did we manage through those times, and really where we are today and what's up next. So that's really the summary of what I'm going to talk about. Um, Clearly, the employees played a very big role in making things happen, despite those challenging circumstances. And from a time where that surprise took us in the month of March, in about a month's time, um, as an organization, we had enabled over 98% of our employees across the two locations we are present in the Philippines, which is Manila and Cebu, to be able to then work safely from their homes. Um, um, Basically, when the pandemic was declared and a community quarantine was announced, last March, if you recollect, um, we had to activate our backup sites and start thinking about how our teams, our employees could work from home. We realized that it basically meant that we needed to have the right kind of IT equipment and the infrastructure to be able to switch to a work from home setup. And that's really what we had to take a quick decision on, to invest in specific equipment. We realized it basically meant that everybody needs to have at least a laptop to be able to work from home, given the nature of work which we do from here. We needed to figure out how to deliver laptops and the other peripheral equipment to the employees at their homes. So we then were able to contract delivery service providers. We also had our own team members, specifically the IT support teams, who assisted in delivering all the equipment so that then it could be set up, and the network connections that would be needed for people to be able to operate effectively from their homes. So we had these people, our IT teams, equipped in the protective gear at that time, carrying those equipment, figuring out the actual addresses of all those people, and then going in our office organized vans to be able to provide them all this equipment. And in a matter of days, we purchased these laptops. We had the Wi-Fi dongles, we had the headsets to be deployed to our employees. We started also providing internet, because a number of the people didn't have the internet at home, or even if there was existing internet facility, it wasn't at the speed levels that we needed for them to do their work effectively, right? So we provided them that allowance. We provided all this equipment so that they could work from home. And by the April of last year, we had all the people I spoke about um, ready and up and running in a stable environment from home. But we did need some people in the office, right? The IT people who were taking care and monitoring the control center to man the network infrastructure. And they would go to the office again with those PPEs, and they were provided shuttle service to be able to travel back and forth from their homes. The challenge was after this that the network connections still were not very stable, especially for some of our employees who were working from remote places. So it took a fair bit of time to get them to stable state, figure out how best to structure the network traffic so that our customers could be best serviced. But overall, as a group, very happy to say that the team from Philippines was able to maintain the service levels across everything we did for our customers. We also, realized that after a few weeks that the lockdown is going to be extended clearly. So we needed to now start thinking about the well-being of our employees. So that's what we did next. We had to organize sessions for people, our employees, so that they were getting supported on an ongoing basis. For that, we needed to set up some small work groups and sessions. And these are all now happening digitally, right? So we had to get the right kind of software tools in place, and we had to organize our people leaders to be able to kind of work in the new environment by connecting with the teams on an ongoing basis, but then also to provide them support in terms of health and wellness to everyone over a period of time. So we did that by inviting first our internal leaders, but also inviting external speakers to talk about things like how do you get mental, emotional, how do you deal with physical stress in terms of times of the pandemic when people can't virtually go out of their homes at all. And then how do you adjust to this new work environment? And along that journey, we also started introducing sessions for parents, for mothers, especially because the children, especially young kids, were also back at home, and the schools were closed as well, right? We realized that we needed to provide ongoing communication around health tips, around wellness strategies, and other sort of provide the useful reference material through this journey. So we had to do that. The other thing which we were going to miss was we have these people engagement sessions while people were in office, such as town halls. We have these recognition events. So we had to transition from physically doing that to a virtual environment, including our year-end recognition event. We did that virtually for everyone in Philippines. And at the same time, while we were providing support to the employees, we realized that as a QBE foundation, we also support the local communities, and that format of how we supported needed to change. So we worked extensively with our charity partners to support the local communities across both Cebu and Philippines through a new methodology, i.e., for example, how do we do that remotely versus needing to be physically there? So some of the things that as a group we were able to do was to donate over 900 food packages for the families, especially those who were severely affected by the lockdown. For adults and children, we realized that there is a need for their well-being, so we distributed vitamin packs. We had hygiene kits for the community isolation centers, specifically, for example, in Cebu. And then we also gave away PPE kits to hospitals to support the medical frontliners. So there were some of the things that we managed to pull through despite the pandemic. And really happy to say that by the end of the year, QB was selected as a part of Asia CEO's Circle of Excellence, specifically for the recognition for the work in the community. And then the World Wildlife Foundation also, we partnered with them in their water pillar, and we were recognized as the water pillar partner of the year for the support that we were able to jointly provide for reforestation of the watershed around the Ipoh Dam. It's been a challenging 2020, but I can say that our teams overall have been strong. We've been very resilient, and together as a group, as a team, QB, the GSSC, the Shared Service Center is tougher, and it's actually surprised our business partners in other geographies because there was a view, and there's a lot of critical activities and tasks that we perform out of the GSSC across everything that we do in QB, and we support all the global geographies. So they were pleasantly surprised by the resilience of the team. And I feel that, despite all these challenges, the team has remained at the top of the game. It's always been proactive, looking ahead and preparing for the future. And now as we enter this year, the question is about return to office is the next theme. And we had actually started thinking about it last year itself to figure out that as the pandemic slows down, what can we do? And how do we actually enable people to return to office? Because a lot of employees are quite keen to be back in office, being able to share and work together. So we've got a physical office space which was always prepared. I mentioned some of the IT staff and some of the people were coming to the office on an ongoing basis. So we've got the security features in place, safety guidelines. We have an app which is being used to make sure that everybody is signing off and before they actually enter the office premises. And there are policies and guidelines that we've put in place to support this. There's actually an exclusive work group which is dedicated to overseeing the preparation and implementation of a safe return environment. This group is actually reviewing over 20 plus government guidelines to ensure that we are compliant with all the changes that are taking place. Preparation of our facilities is on. There are those necessary signages within the premises, so that we have a new normal in office with all the physical distancing, but making sure that our employees and the leaders are well prepared to be stepping back into work, and we have initiated that process. The other thing clearly is the vaccine, because everybody is keen to figure out when that arrives. So we have been partnering with the industry associations to make sure that when the vaccines become available in the country, then we are able to provide that at no cost to our employees as well. So that's another sort of task that we wanted taken. We also realized through this pandemic that actually for everything we do at work, where we felt that we needed everybody back in office all the time, that it is not necessarily required, because for the last 1 year or so, people have been working from home very effectively. So we are rethinking about or reimagining how the workspace of the future will look like, so that we can continue to provide enriching experiences to the workforce, make them more future ready, but then also make it more fit for purpose. So that's all in the works around what does the future behold, and we are working through that redesigning of our workplace strategies as we speak. All I can say is, there is this Filipino word. If I were to describe last year's experience, it's called Bayanihan. So that's what I feel we've done. We've really come together as one community, as one family. At the start of the pandemic, everybody was just helping out. And I think that's what we've been able to achieve, even if things were not in the job description of various people. I do feel that while we have been physically apart, we've actually grown together, stronger, closer. We've not lost the connection. And I think that's been reflected actually within our internal survey as well, where we received the best participation rate within the entire QB organization from the GSSC. So proud to be a part of that journey, and proud to be a part of the employee base, which are excited to be at work. So I'll stop at that. Super excited to continue this journey, knowing what we know now, which we didn't know earlier, and most importantly, that we can count on each other. Thank you.
So Samir, that's a good story. And how long do you think you'll be in Philippines? Do you think, hard to say, I guess, but you're here for foreseeable future, or what do you think?
Well, that's very well put. You've put words into my mouth, Richard. Foreseeable future is the right answer. As you've seen from my journey or my experiences, it's been not 100% guided by me. I believe there is a higher being which has guided me where I am,
Yes.
and right now it's Philippines, and so shall it be till the time there's another calling. So yeah, foreseeable future.
That's true. I think there is a higher being looking after your career, because you've really done some interesting things, Samir. So well done. Well done to you. Okay, so our next speaker, we have Andres Ortola. He is the general manager of Microsoft, and really a leader in the industry, and really focused naturally on the technology and transformation side of this industry. This is an important area that we really need to focus on. I know, there's so many opportunities and risks if we don't do this as fast as possible. So Andres has worked with companies across South America, the Middle East, and Asia, and we're so glad that he wanted to be a part of this event. So please welcome Andres Ortola, General Manager of Microsoft. Thank you, Andres.
Hi. My name is Andres Ortola. I'm the country manager for Microsoft in the Philippines. Thank you so much for having us here, Richard, today. I'd love to share our vision for what we consider the digital BPO and the future of the industry. We have seen and we see several forces pushing to disrupt this market and this industry. Manila and the Philippines continue to be a leader in the world, contended by India perhaps, but just continue to be a leader when it comes to that equation of cost and talent. However, there are many other cities and locations in the world that are major contenders, and they're developing new capabilities that will put pressure on our local industry. We've seen this year and last year major tailwinds and headwinds. Just to name a few, obviously COVID-19 has changed the way everybody operated, and that has brought some new business opportunities for BPOs as companies moving to perhaps offshore, offload some of the work they needed to. But at the same time, we've seen huge headwinds and missed opportunities also derived from the same situation. There's been a huge unplanned cost. We estimate about 120 billion pesos has been spent on unplanned cost, whether it's location, remote work, job, work continuity, etc. And that has had to be addressed. There is an increasing disruption from new technologies and new contenders on automation, on robotics, on artificial intelligence. There's also a threat from reshoring some of these operations as companies rethink about their strategies and how to perform this type of work. So when I talk to most of the business owners and CEOs of here in the Philippines and the world, I hear consistent themes. I hear the same type of questions. How do I become the partner of choice for my customers? How do I move from a transactional relationship or low value transactions into a higher form of interaction with my customer, a higher form of value? How do I improve my productivity when it comes to this new setup, this new environment, this new way of working? How do I look and fight and compete for talent? It's always a theme for most of the companies, essentially, especially on the BPO right now. And last but not least, how do I operate in this new environment with reducing or managing my security and my data risks? the gates of the castle are open now, and everybody's required to operate from many multiple points. And so the traditional ways of protecting and securing the business are no longer valid. So how do I prepare for that new phase of the business? The future and the present and the future of the industry will depend on who and how we implement this new business architecture that will be flexible enough and support the new requirements. A couple of consistent themes are securing that remote work. Like I said before, how do I operate in this super hyper distributed environment? How do I create digital omni-channels so I can provide the same excellent experience to my customers regardless of where I am operating from? How do I, at the same time, continue improving my workforce opportunity when I don't have the ability to have a supervisor or the human supervision is no longer an option? How do I create intelligent operations? And that is, how do I get and feed my business with real-time information? How do I visualize my operations so I can make decisions faster? How do I automate? And how do I intelligently and planfully I can move my low-value transactions into an automation engine, a machinery that can give me that value, and I can translate the value back to my customers? How do I extract intelligence and insights from all my customers' interactions, make sense out of them, and create more intelligence to put back on my business? At the same time, and with that intelligence, how do I create a better experience for my customers? How do I make sure I put that intelligence in front of my agents, in front of my employees, to make sure they get that customer service right and they get it better? And last but not least, how do I transform my company in being more agile and bring those capabilities faster and with more precision to the business when the business needs it? At Microsoft, we've been operating in most of our transformation engagements with a 3-horizon roadmap. This model allows us to put a time frame and a sequence to all these transformations, all these new capabilities that every business needs to develop. Some things can be done in parallel, some things can be done sequentially. But essentially, what the model looks at is a first horizon of digitization. How do I create a faster, a more robust infrastructure, a more robust platform for services so I can innovate and faster? The second horizon then is innovation. How do I shorten the time to innovate? How do I bring new things into market? Last but not least is, once I have these engines moving, how do I then transform my business? How do I make use of these new capabilities I have to inject new business and new services and markets, how to transform the way I do some of the business, etc., all across the new business capabilities we described. That 3-horizon roadmap can bring you to a vision like this. This is our vision for a fully digital BPO architecture. If you think about all these capabilities, are essential capabilities that sometimes exist, sometimes are even in development, but the ability to get them into a digital space and you be able to be nimble and to drive complete agility from end to end in your operation, that's what's going to make a difference in the years to come. We think about the virtual BPO as a concept, and how do I create the ultimate state of nimble and agility for my company. These are the vision that we bring building for customers. These are the vision that we're bringing alive for some of them, and the vision I'd love to share with most of you when we engage. We are going to continue working in the Philippines to make sure we stay to our mission, stay true to our mission of empowering every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. I want to thank you very much for your time this morning. Thank you, Richard, for the opportunity, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Okay, Andre, so that was interesting. So yeah, and I know, if I can say, a lot of companies do seem to do things in the way they've always done things, but it is daunting to look at how to change a whole business model. But what would be the first step in this, Andres? What do you recommend people in the industry do?
Well, thanks. It's a broad question, but I would say it comes down to rethinking those pockets of that business architecture I spoke about just before. When you think about, I hear quite often that artificial intelligence might be a competitor to this industry. Now, if you think about it as a key business capability, insert it in your plans and make sure you can streamline it with all your processes, they will become a powerful ally. Thinking about the use of data, intelligent operations, how can you get data integrated and have a real-time feedback? We call that the digital feedback loop, when you can react almost in real time or in real time to the demands of the public out there. Imagine building flexible workforce when you can act on demand, having an elasticity baked into your processes. All this new thinking is what I think we should be thinking right now, because if we don't do it, Richard, someone else will. And those competitors, those players that are upcoming and looking at the Philippines as a stronghold for BPOs, they're going to come in from that angle, from an angle of innovation, most likely.
True. And now here in Philippines, many of the people who came here running operations didn't expect to be as big as they are. But do you think that the people here are able to make these decisions to really digitize in a strong way? It seems like they should be, right? Because these are big operations in this country.
Well, one of the things that cloud technologies have done for us is sort of somehow democratized the access to them. So the truth is today, big or small, you need to be moving, you need to be innovative. So you can't just expect that because your size or your volume will keep you, will grant you some special rights. But to your point, I think the sizes that we have in the Philippines grant us the benefit of the experience, of the field experience that others don't have. If you're going to roll out new processes, new experiences, you need to do it from here. You need to build expertise here, and perhaps we'll end up building a center of innovation for business process outsourcing, and we'll become that expertise exporter from the Philippines to the world as perhaps a new line of revenue for most of the companies that are with us today.
Yeah, and now when we spoke a bit before this, you mentioned new lines of business. What are some of the new lines of businesses that you think are possibilities for companies here?
Well, I think there is so much richness in what's happening around everything right now at the moment. When you think about the ability, the demand for offshore and inshore services for many companies, they're actually pushing for a flexible, elastic service provider. That happens to, for example, us cloud providers. The value that we bring is that we can grow and shrink on demand. Why not expecting this type of service from other type of companies, from those type of services? So if you think about it, ultimately on a virtual BPO, in a virtual scenario that you can shrink and contract, you can move and anticipate demand. So look, I know something is going to come because I'm predicting this spike, and therefore I'm gonna have more people, more calls, more processes ready. Anticipation is key. And that it is probably one capability that everybody should be developing. BPOs are not. But like I said before, and there's a lot of new roads for this era. Now, there's also challenges, and one of them, and I don't want to go without touching on it quickly, is risk management and security. Because this world of flexibility, of data, of open gates, the gates of the castle have opened, and our people is working in the open from their homes or even abroad, will require companies to be a lot more mindful around building that capacity of controlling your risk dynamically, quickly act upon it, and then keep your implementation secure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, certainly a roadmap is I think what a lot of people need. And now, Andres, you and your people, you go into organizations and you help them with this process, do you?
Precisely, yes. And
Okay.
and we
That
try
would be
to
the best.
we try to follow this approach, Richard, of three horizons, right? Well, horizon one, you build that foundation. You cannot build anything when your foundation isn't right. Build an elastic foundation, secure, ready to go. The second horizon is when you bring innovation. What is it that you're going to innovate on, building already on that foundation? And number three, horizon three, it could be, it depends on the company, 1 year out, 2 years out, or 1 week out. Then horizon three is about transforming. It's about rethinking those businesses. How can I make, for example, use of the amount of data I have now generated over years to build and to produce a new business? That is the key, and that's how we always tackle these transformation projects. Small sprints, organizing waves of innovation. That's what's been resulting well for us.
Okay, Andres. Well, maybe I can welcome or invite people on your behalf to come and see you, or you see them, because I
For
think
sure.
it's important, like you said, that the industry remains, innovative, and it'd be nice to see more than what we're seeing. But okay. Well, thank you very much again, Andres, and keep up the great work, and we'll see you again soon, I'm sure.
Thank you so much, Richard. Pleasure being here. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Arthur Nowak. He is the Senior Vice President of Asia Operations for T-Tech, formerly known as Teletech. And this is an organization that has done a lot for the country. It's one of the largest employers of the nation. And Arthur is certainly one of the most senior people in the industry. He oversees Philippines, India, Australia, New Zealand, and does a lot within his organization. Arthur is also a big proponent of diversity and inclusion, and has made his company one of the nation's premier advocates of diversity and inclusion. So a very special guest, please welcome Arthur Nowak of T-Tech. Welcome, Arthur.
All right, thank you, Richard. Always a great opportunity to participate with Asia CEO and have the opportunity to exchange ideas and share our story. Always some good conversations on the Asia CEO panels. So love being a part of the group and being able to talk through our thoughts. Here today, I'm excited to talk about retooling for the future. And so I think, certainly the pandemic 2020 was a tough but transformative year for all of us. And I like to equate it to a dumpster that you want to set on fire, right? You want to put all these issues we handled in 2020, and you want to put them away and set it on fire and never think about it again. And so I think this image that I'm sharing now is very indicative of how many of us are probably feeling. But the reality, though, is that 2020 did bring out a significant amount of change. And as it relates to the BPO industry and the customer experience industry, we've seen a rapid increase and acceleration of digitization, right? And frankly, people have seen 2020 accelerate their digital transformation plans at a much rapid pace than could have been predicted. And one of the things that we try to answer as a company very much in this space is, well, how much digital transformation was accelerated? And how do you really quantify it? And what does that really look like? And by our estimates, we're somewhere between 5 to 10 years of acceleration happened in the portion of the 10-month period since the pandemic hit in 2020. And then what does that really mean, right? So when we think about digital acceleration, how do we quantify it? And you have to look at it, I think, from three different areas: process, the business model. So how do we interact and actually conduct business? And then cultural and organizational operation. How do we actually operationalize in this new, this new digital economy? And by all accounts, the adoption of process transformation and how digital is impacting processes, rapid, as you can see by this graph that I'm highlighting here, it's just a rapid acceleration of what's implemented across the business. Also, in terms of business model, the changes that have happened where, now entire marketplaces are entirely digital and customers are 100% serviced out of a digital channel. And the increase of remote work, online products and services, and the migration to cloud has significantly accelerated beyond expectations as a result of the pandemic. And so, if you think about your day-to-day lives, you see all of these impacts. Think about how you eat now under the pandemic with, things like Food Panda and Grab delivery. Your work at home, Zoom conference calls, the way we travel or lack thereof now of travel. The time we're spending maybe gaming as our entertainment on the weekends versus going out in public. Media consumption, Netflix, online, viewership, different streaming services that have become available. Online shopping, the emergence of brands who now have an online presence that before did not have an online presence. The way you receive healthcare, telemedicine, public benefits, learning, and how we've had to adapt in the learning environment. So some of these changes, while we always talk about going back to the new normal or the back to normal, the reality is there's going to be a new normal. And a lot of these changes that we experienced through the pandemic are ultimately here to stay. And so why do we care? Well, we care because ultimately it's important for us to recognize that 2020 was a tough but transformative year. We have about 5 to 10 years of digital experience that's accelerated in the course of 10 months, and it's here to stay. And as a CX enabling industry, we have to respond to that change. And so from a TTEC perspective, we really look at digital transformation and human innovation partnering together. So, there's all these kind of foreboding predictions that technology is going to take over the contact center experience. And we see it very differently than that. We see it as very complementary and very synergistic in our industry. And we liken technology and digital transformation to how you would think of a butler. See, a butler is there when you need them, but kind of out of the way when you don't. See, and technology, we've all had experiences with technology where it becomes obtrusive or annoying in the customer experience. And that's not how a butler would be rated, right? You want a butler to be there when you need them. Same thing with technology. We need them to be there. We need technology to be there when we need them, but then we also need human intervention when appropriate. And the ideal customer experience continuum is those working in a complementary way. And so for us, technology is a force multiplier when people are doing the jobs that are of the utmost importance. And so for TTEC, what we've been doing is we've been introducing a culture shift called Culture CX. And put simply, it's a movement that focuses on the underlying correlation between two corporate variables: positive work culture and delivering excellent customer experience, and ultimately results and customer outcomes. And so for us, it's about a robust, holistic, and differentiated employee value proposition that builds an energized environment, gets people excited to learn more, broaden their skills. So you got to create an environment that motivates people to learn, and then use that learning, use that development to basically extract value for the clients we do business with a CX continuum. And for us, we've built this ecosystem where we're retooling people to be familiar with the digital experience and how that should complement the customer experience. And we're taking those insights from our frontline employees and delivering that as value, as consulting-led value for the business engagements we have with our clients, and helping to drive their customer experience and helping to ensure that technology is optimized, that it has a very butler-centric type of approach in how it's leveraged in the customer experience, and not this obtrusive obstacle that we have to overcome. And so we've been equipping our frontline teams to essentially be familiar with customer journey mapping, and where they can map the end-to-end customer journey that happens before the contact center experience, and also that happens after the contact center experience. And in seeing that full end-to-end journey, we're able to identify opportunities for improvement in either process or technology that can better optimize the way that customers experience with the brands that we support. And so we've had a very successful 2020. For us last year in this retooling, we've delivered 250 almost proactive solutions or ideas to our clients, and that we've presented that's coming from our frontline teams. About roughly 70% of those solutions are accepted by our clients. They're delivering about 5 to 7% of value to our clients if you measure that as a percentage of their total contact center spend. Imagine that. That's a pretty significant amount of savings or value that frontline teams are able to deliver. And that's underpinned by that ecosystem I was talking about before that's driven our people to involve themselves in broader professional development. And so we're seeing a 310% increase in the amount of professional development hours spent on retooling, retooling yourself, growing your professional skill set. And we're applying that towards this digital evolution that we're seeing happen and unfold in our industry. And we've awarded people who have pioneered us in that journey. So we've had across 40,000 employees across the globe. Last year, our retooling, worked out to be about 1,500 people were able to participate in these journey mapping exercises and get rewarded for their work on driving insights to our clients. And as a result, we're seeing a response in measures of like employee engagement. We've seen a 9% increase in employee engagement, because if I can now impact the customer experience ecosystem I work in, it's a much more enriched and valuable job for me as an employee. I add value, I'm being heard, I'm being listened to. And so while 1,500 might seem like a small percentage of people to work on these customer journey maps, it's an evolution. We've started the evolution. We're excited about how we're retooling the workforce for the future. We're excited about the career opportunities and professional development that it affords our staff. And we think it places us in a very unique position to take advantage of what's unfolding before us and embracing the technology transformation that's happening across the globe. Thank you.
Okay, wow. Well delivered and good information, Arthur, as usual. Our next speaker, and I consider it kind of a highlight of the event among many good speakers, I gotta say, but Amit Jaga, he is Senior Vice President, Country Head of Concentrics. And this, if you don't know, because you've been sleeping under a log, this is the largest private sector employer in the nation. Close to 100,000 people, Filipinos, now work for this organization in Philippines at just high quality jobs. Amit is a long-term employee of his organization, 21 years. So if there's anyone who can vouch for the idea that career stability equals career success, this is Amit. So we're so pleased to have him. He's really settled into Philippines for the past 5 years. Him and his wife just adore the place, traveling around and all kinds of good things he talks about with Philippines and Filipinos. Please welcome our very special guest, Amit Jaga, the country head of Concentrics. Welcome, Amit.
Thank you so much, Richard, for having me and for such a nice introduction. I was myself a little more impressed than I usually am with myself. So thank you for boosting my confidence as we start the day. very excited to be in this special Asia CEOs Forum. We've always held Asia CEOs as a very premium organization. We feel privileged to be a part of it. As Richard, you mentioned earlier, Concentrix now is the largest private sector employer in the Philippines. We are playing between 90,000 to 100,000 people in the region. It is the largest region for us, very strategic. And the reason we find the region very strategic is for 3 big reasons. The first big reason is our ability to get the right talent. The right age, the median age of the country is just about perfect for the BPO industry. And I think that's why we've such significant growth of the industry here. The second big reason is in the region is to be so close to the Western culture. I think the Filipino population in general is very adaptive and very accommodative, as well as very quick to understand the different cultures. And that's been helping us a lot in driving a lot of success in the region. And the third, I think the most obvious reason is creating a great service for the world. I think the Filipino hospitality and the Filipino focus on delivering a great service is world renowned. And I think that's the key aspect which has been driving us to make significant investments in the region. Very pleased to be part of the organization, which if we go back about 7-8 years ago was less than 10,000 people, and today has grown almost 10-fold to become a 100,000 people organization. So very proud to be a part of this journey within the Philippines space. In the past few years, we've taken some significant steps. If I go back and look at the journey of the last 2-3 years, I think the first significant step that we took was the Convergys acquisition. It was a very large acquisition for us because if I go back about 3.5 years when we did the acquisition, we were in the Philippines half the size of what Convergys was at that time from a legacy Concentrix perspective. So it was a little bit of a tale of a reverse integration, so to say. But I think the teams came about extremely well together, created a lot of synergy, and also paved a great path for growth. Because when we look at the two organizations coming together at that time, we were about 75,000 people. And from 75,000 people, we very quickly grew about 25-30% in the last 2-3 years. So very solid growth and a lot of synergy and efficiency being created with two large organizations coming together, with Convergys' maturity of processes and in Concentrix's entrepreneurial approach. I think it was a great marriage of two great brands, and from there on, it took off very well for us. Last year has been challenging, as it has been for a lot of our peers as well in the industry. The pandemic did throw us a little bit off track from some of our plans. I mean, we got into 2020 thinking very differently of what we will do, and we ended up doing very different things through the year. But I'm very proud to say that in spite of all the challenges, I think we did the right thing for our staff and for our clients. From a place in March 2020 where our business almost got to a standstill when the lockdown was implemented by the local government, to a point where very happy to report that we have completely recovered the business and we are now back on a growth trajectory. So that's a very positive step. It also gives me a lot of pride to say that some of the steps that we took during that time, be it being the first one to come into the market to say that we will take care of vaccinating every employee that we have who willingly wants to get inoculated, I think was a big statement. And I'm proud that we paved the way for the industry by being the first one to say that. And when we did say it, we did not even know what is it that it's exactly going to cost us. How do we get the money for it? But really what was important for us at that time was to say the right thing. And we knew that if we say the right thing and do the right thing, we will end up finding a way to make it happen. So very proud to really have made that commitment and now following through on it with some of the deals that we've signed recently. The recent one that we signed with AstraZeneca and the Philippines government, where we are getting 50,000 doses for our staff and 50,000 doses for the local Filipino frontliners, which we will donate to the government. I think was the first step, and now we're in the process of getting more doses so that everybody who's willingly wanting to take a shot does get a shot free of cost from the organization. So I think that's a big step. The other big initiative that I want to talk about is that as we now slowly return to office, because majority of our people started working from home as we set the entire infrastructure up for that. But as we slowly return to office, because at some point of time we foresee that maybe we'll never return 100% back to office, but we will get some people back to office. And we're now beginning to see that. One of the big issues that our staff was reporting constantly was lack of public transportation. And that was a big issue where people were saying that, because of social distancing measures and because in general, the public transportation is lacking, there was a big ask that how can we solve the issue? And we tried multiple ways in which we could solve it. And frankly, we did struggle a little. I mean, we started with paying people allowances. It to a certain degree helped, but still the public transport was just not available to the level. So even if you pay people, how do they come to the office? And very pleased to say that last month, what we did was we launched our own dedicated transportation system in Metro Manila and all across the regional sites as well, where we have Concentrix branded buses, which fly. So we've started the pilot with 55 buses in Manila. These are completely branded Concentrix buses. They have Wi-Fi, they have aircon. Some of them also have built-in toilets on the bus. And all you need to do is that if you're a Concentrix staff, you just show your ID and you can just ride the bus. You can come to office, and these buses fly from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. in the night. First of its kind, very different, something which we are experimenting with. We did this because of lack of public transportation, but if the staff does feel value in it, I think we'll just keep running it forever in the Philippines. And I think that's something which is very, very differentiated. And I think we've been able to do it because of our scale, because we've got almost 50,000-60,000 people working in Metro Manila, about 40,000 working in the regional sites. So the initiative did make sense. And I think people are beginning to realize the value as they're using the service. And if this does make sense, we are willing to grow this further as well and provide more service to people in terms of their ability to come to office. Okay. The other thing that I would like to talk about is in this entire pandemic, what we were focused on is not just the recovery of the business, but making sure how we make a difference for the communities. What we did when we were at the height of the pandemic was that we were seeing tons and tons of displaced workers, people who were losing their jobs. And thankfully, because BPO industry was able to move very quickly to work at home with a lot of changes that we did, we were still, I would say, the lucky ones as an industry, because a lot of the industry moved to work at home, which meant people could keep their employment even in the lockdown, because they were not coming out of their house and breaking any rules of curfew or a lockdown. But unfortunately, a lot of our other industries within the region were not that lucky. We look at hospitality industry, which came to a complete standstill, lost a lot of jobs. And when we realized it, what we did was we reached out to the Department of Tourism. And what we did was, in conjunction with the Department of Tourism, we came up with a joint initiative where we said that we will first give preference to the displaced workers of other industries, rather than just going out and hiring and poaching from other BPO industries, so to say, because it is easy for us to get talent from our industry peers, because we need to not train them too much. They already know the business to a certain degree. But really, is that the right thing to do? Because they already have a job, they already are working, they have a livelihood. How do we make a difference in the community where even if we have to put some more investments up front, but we create employment opportunities for people who are displaced? And that's something that we did last year quite aggressively, where we created that partnership with Department of Tourism. And we did these virtual job fairs only focused on displaced workers. We would have done probably 40, 50 such job fairs, going into the specific regions, working with the LGUs, making sure that we put the extra investments, because a lot of these people were used to working in a different industry. For them, BPO industry was very different. So we put in a lot of investment to make sure that they get trained well. Even before they joined us, we actually set up training aids for them even before they were joining us. And even when they joined us, we actually did a lot of training for them so that we made them job ready for the BPO industry. Some of them did not even come and join us and started doing something else. But at least we took pride in creating that learning environment for them by making those investments, where a lot of those displaced workers were able to find something for them in that tough time. Some of them have gone back to their base industries as the tourism sector is opening up. But even for the 2, 3, 4 months that we provided them employment in last year, I think created a big difference in the communities. And I think it also created a great value add for us, because we got a lot of diverse talent with them coming in. Usually, you look at a specific way when you've been part of the industry for a long time. I look at myself, the same industry, 21 years. So probably I've gotten used to a specific way of looking at things. But when we got people from these displaced sectors, we saw a lot of diversity of thought coming in. We saw a lot of focus coming in on, how do you take care of customers? Because when you're in a hospitality sector, when you're in a hotel or a restaurant, you're taking care of your customers day in and day out who are sitting in front of you. So you know how to handle and take pressure. So good learnings that we also got when we got a lot of these leaders coming in, or a lot of these frontline staff coming in from different sectors to come and join us. So I think it became a good win-win, and I think a great experiment. I would really urge the industry to, because we still have quite a bit of displaced workers and impacted industries. We still aren't recovered 100%. So wherever we could, we should be going out and making investments for these industries to create a difference in the communities that we operate in. As we look at the future now, going into 2021 and beyond, I think the industry will have to evolve because 2020 was a very defining year. With the pandemic coming in, it was a defining year. A lot of us moved to working at home. We accepted the new normal. But the reality is that a lot of that was done in a knee-jerk environment. It was done to quickly react to a situation rather than a more planned approach to how we want to evolve. I think beyond 2021, we have to do a lot of evolution. We have to make sure that we are now planning for the future. And there are 2 or 3 big initiatives that Concentrix is working on, if you really look at how we're planning for the future. The one big one I would want to talk about is our ability to enable work at home. Because we strongly believe that work at home is going to stay. Obviously, it's not going to stay at the levels that it is currently at, because as people get vaccinated and we are able to get to a point where it is more safe to return to work, obviously it will reduce. But in the longer term, I think we have proven to the world that Philippines does have the infrastructure and the wherewithal to be able to continue enabling work at home for the future as well. And I think there are 2 or 3 very, very critical aspects that we will collectively have to work on to be able to enable that. The first big one, I would say, is connectivity. And I'm pleased to say that the telcos within the country have taken great strides in the last 1 year to be able to deliver that right level of connectivity to a lot of our staff, so that they are enabled to seamlessly work from their home rather than coming to office. I still think the telcos will have to make a lot more investment in being able to enable that for the future. And they will have to figure out how they channelize that investment, where they were doing a lot of planning for the large offices, and how do they move that investment to people's homes, especially in the provinces. Because if you look at the metro connectivity today, I think that's come up extremely well. But if you look at the province connectivity, I think still there is a little bit of focus that is required. And the goal that we should have as a country is that, wherever you are in the country, you should have seamless internet connectivity, so that we don't have to worry about where the talent is coming from. So I think that's one part where we are working very closely with our telco providers and making sure that that enablement happens through the entire region. The second big one is how do we create a hybrid? And what I mean by the hybrid is that suppose we go and hire people who are working at home and are working in a province near Metro Manila. It's one thing to say that yes, we've set them up for success, but can we do that day in and day out with 100% resiliency? Because when you create a site where you provide BPO service, you create a very heightened level of resilience in that site. You have multiple levels of failures which are planned for. So you've got a primary line coming in for internet, and you've got a secondary line coming in, and you've got a tertiary line coming in. For power, you've got multiple levels of redundancy built in, so that if there is a power failure, then you go to a genset, and if that doesn't work, you go to an inverter, etc., etc. So with this heightened level of redundancy built into our operations, how do you build that redundancy at a person's home? That's something which we've been thinking about, and what we've come to a decision on is that we need to create a hybrid. And what I mean by hybrid here is that, okay, we talk about one province, for example, Bulacan or Cavite, which is not very close to Metro Manila, but still close. It's still outside the city, but it's still a province. Suppose we get 1,000 people who work in Bulacan, all working from home. They don't have to travel every day to Metro Manila to come and work for us. So they are comfortable, but how do we heighten their level of resilience? How about creating a small site or a community center for them in Bulacan? And why not one, maybe 2, 3, 4 community centers for them in Bulacan, which we dedicate to the communities there, where people can come in, people can use the space for joint meetings, which they can do. They can use the space for training. They can, we can set up some gardening area for them where they can do some, community activities. We can set up some classes for them where their kids can learn. And at the same time, we create a few seats in the community center where if the connectivity or the power situation in the home is a problem, they can immediately walk in or take a tricycle and just reach that community hub and then work for a few days from there or work for a day from there. Or if their computer breaks down, we can just send somebody from that community hub very quickly to the person's home, deliver a piece of peripheral, be it a connecting device or a mouse or something else that is needed. And I think that hybrid will take the resilience of our work at home staff to a completely different level. So we've already started working on this initiative. We feel that the future is hybrid, where we penetrate a lot more in work at home, but at the same time, we create an infrastructure and an environment which enables that as well in the future. Because right now, if something goes wrong, if power fluctuates in the person's house, or if they lose connectivity, they lose the full day. They lose the full day of employment. We lose productivity. It isn't sustainable in the longer term. So we create that hybrid environment for them where if something like this happens, they can quickly go in to a small community hub which is close to their house. They can just walk in, or they can just take a tricycle, reach there, and suddenly you create this hybrid model which takes us to a completely different level. So I think that's one part which will take us to the next level, and as we are planning for the future. The other thing that we have to focus on is capability building in the Philippines. I think we've proven to the world that in the base customer service, in a lot of entry-level stuff, tech support, F&A work, HRO work, we've really proven ourselves as a region of choice. But we also have to upskill our people in being able to do more and more complex work. Because if we look at the industry today, what is happening in the industry is that, as with any other industry, there's a lot of automation which is being driven. And with automation being driven, what happens is that the base of the pyramid continues to go away. And what is left is more and more complex work. And we have to, as the region, be prepared to do a lot more complex work. And what we are seeing is a few themes of complex work that is emerging. We are seeing that the basic customer service, which is, questions like, how do I reset my password? Can you help me with a specific, order that I placed, etc. That's all evaporating because, there's a lot of self-serve that is coming in. What is left with is a lot more complex work, which needs a lot more conversational ability, which needs an ability to understand complex situations, because, only if artificial intelligence is not able to solve that is when a human intervention is required. So we have to continuously upskill a lot of our Filipino workforce to be able to be ready for that. And we're already seeing a lot of positive outcome because one, people are already learning, the industry is maturing. We as a workforce are constantly evolving over the years, over the last 15-20 years since the time Philippines has been operating for this industry. But we also have to make some strategic investments for the future. It is critical that we make those investments now to be able to be as successful as we are now in 2025 and beyond as well. And that is where we are investing a lot on capability building for our staff. We've launched multiple initiatives. One of them is Career Navigator, which is an initiative which actually helps people get upskilled on more complex tasks for the future. So you can enroll, it's like an in-house Concentrics University. You enroll in that, and what you can do as you enroll into an initiative like that is that it throws it. So you first go through an assessment to understand what is your skill level today. And then it throws at you, bases your skill level, what is it that you can upskill on. So for example, if I'm doing a base customer service job, it throws at me that, okay, do you want to get yourself prepared for a complex customer service job or a complex tech support job? And then I choose my career path. I say, okay, I want to go for complex tech support. When I choose the career path, it gives me self-paced online trainings to say, okay, if you go through these 5 trainings, you can be ready for a complex tech support job for the future. And once I complete that, then I get into the queue that when the next job opens for a complex tech support work, I automatically get moved there. And by the way, because it's a more complex job, maybe I start making 20% more than what I was making in the past, and so on and so forth. So once you do that job, do you want to become a team leader? Do you want to become an ops manager? And so on and so forth. So you keep growing your career and keep upskilling yourself through the course. And this, I think, not just from a career path perspective, but specific skills perspective. How do we get deeper into areas like banking, healthcare? How do we get deeper into these areas? And that is where I think we as an organization and industry in general will have to put a lot of effort and investment for the future, because Philippines is extremely successful today. But if we have to be successful in 2025 and beyond, we have to start planning for it now. And the industry generally should come together and start focusing on this deep domain building for its staff for the future. So I think that's the other area which is very, very critical for us as Concentrics. And we are now looking at how we can partner as an industry as well to be able to create value for Philippines in the future.
Okay, welcome to the question and answer session of Asia BPM Forum 2021. We welcome the talented Mitzi Borromeo as our host. And we have some very high-powered people, as you know, key people of this industry. So I'm really looking forward to this part of the event, as I do with most of these events. So please welcome Mitzi Borromeo.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mitzi Borromeo, and I'll be moderating the Q&A session now. It's always such a huge pleasure and honor to be part of the Asia CEO Forum events. I really look forward to these forum conversations. I learned so much from all of you. So hello and welcome back again to our brilliant panel over here. And many thanks to all of you watching for joining us here at the Asia BPM Forum 2021. So all of you have talked about how you pivoted during the pandemic, and it's great to hear how you really rose to the occasion, took these challenges and turned them into opportunities to improve. As Richard has said in the introduction to this summit, the crisis didn't kill you, it made you stronger. So I want to look at, just ask everyone here, looking at how crisis has been catalyst for growth, would you give me one word? I'm going to go around here and ask just one word to describe how you're feeling 1 year on since the pandemic hit, where you are now in your career, in your life, in your mind, 1 year on, just one word, and then we'll go further into the discussions later on. So I'm going to start with Celeste.
Transformed, I guess.
Transformed, that's good. Yes. Next is Amit.
Yes. Transformed was my word as well, but I would say a little more learned.
Learned, okay. Arthur?
Invigorated.
Ah, that's a good one. Invigorated. That's a good one. Samir?
Innovated.
Innovative. Okay. Joseph?
Yeah, I'll go for grateful.
Grateful. Good one. Parikshat?
I wanted to say transformation, but I think evolution.
Wonderful, great words. I think it's great to see that I guess we're all looking at this positively, despite the fact I think it was Arthur, you said in your talk that, well, you were speaking earlier, I guess, to Richard, saying how what happened in 2020, everyone just wants to put it in the dumpster. But good to see that we're taking all of the negativity and, I guess, taking the lessons from it. So a big part of this, listening to all of you, it's interesting to see this strong company culture. So I want to start with that because you have so many people under your wing and company culture is so important. So I want to ask all of you, go around, how do you create an environment where employees really feel engaged, empowered, and inspired, especially during this time, during this pandemic? I'll start with Celeste.
During this pandemic, when most of us are working from home, communication is really important, Mitzi. We made sure that we communicated completely to our employees about the situation, about things that we would like them to do, health and wellness, productivity and engagement. We saturated our airwaves, so to speak, with the right types of communication to make sure that all of the employees feel that they are productive, that they are able to contribute regardless of the situation. So communication is key.
Let's move on to Joseph. Joseph, tell us more about your company culture.
Sure. I mean, obviously, culture and engagement is probably more important now than ever, now that we're building and managing teams remotely. So I think we try to do it in a couple of ways. One is obviously online events. I mean, like this today is a fantastic example of that, but also internal events. I mean, for example, like town halls, right? We love town halls here in the Philippines, but we kind of mix it up a bit. So making sure that these are frequent, but not so overpowering and serious all the time. So there could be fun events and virtual team building and so forth. But I think the other one, which is probably a bit deeper in terms of culture, is really ensuring that everyone understands that they are also part of the bigger vision, right? So on a practical standpoint, I mean, we actually shifted from the KPI framework to the OKR framework, for example, to really aid that purpose. Because when everyone really genuinely believes that they are part of the bigger picture and that their function has a tangible impact towards the greater vision, it innately then creates that positive culture that we needed.
Right, feeling included, very important, thank you. Now let's move on to Amit. Amit, Concentrix is the largest private sector employer in the Philippines. There are over 90,000 staff. What's it like at Concentrix? Tell us about the company culture.
Mitzi, what I would say is, typically when we speak about culture, all companies have culture statements. So do we. And our, one of our first culture statement is to be fanatical about our clients and our staff. But what I truly believe culture is to do the right thing when the going is tough. And in 2020, we did see that the going was tough. And what do you do when the going is tough? What defines your culture? So I remember March of 2020 when, almost all industry peers will acknowledge that our revenues came to a grinding halt because most of us are in a brick and mortar environment, office environment. And suddenly with the lockdown, we couldn't have people come in. It was a very difficult call to say that should we pay our people at that time or not. And a lot of us in the industry took the right call. We said, irrespective of whether we are getting revenue from our clients, we need to pay our people. That's the right thing to do. Same I'm seeing with vaccination. I mean, people are taking the call that they will pay for vaccinations for people who are willing and want to go for it. Expensive propositions, but at this time, the right thing to do. And I think that's what defines the culture, that what do you do when the going is tough? Because when the going is easy, anybody can say things and do things. But when the going is tough, do you really believe in the statements that you've written on your walls in your offices and then deliver by that? So that to me is culture.
Well said. When the going gets tough, that's what they say, your true character comes out. Arthur, I saw some recognitions for Teletech or T-Tech. Actually, this was in America, but it speaks for the company around the world. Forbes magazine named T-Tech as one of America's best large employers of 2021. And it's also been named, gotten a lot of other recognitions, such as best employer for veterans, for new grads, for women, for diversity. Tell me more about the culture there at T-Tech.
So I think it stems from us really thinking about our employee culture holistically. So it's hard to box all employees in a single category, right? Everybody comes to us with different needs and a different desire in terms of what they want their experience at T-Tech to be like. And I think what we've done is we've done a really good job at trying to, understand the complete employee value proposition and have a holistic approach so that really when we talk about culture, we're doing things that you may actually be not interested in 50% of it, right? But you're super interested in the other 50%. But the 50% you're not interested in might be very interesting to somebody else, right? And so that's really talking about making sure we're adaptable to the various, needs and desires of our individuals. And all of these segments are work streams within our company environment, and we ask our employees to really build out the culture that they want to see. And it's been exciting to be a part of that journey and see how that unfolds. And the recognition is really a cherry on a cherry on the sundae, so to speak. But for us, it's been cool to just try to, galvanize support from our employees to allow them to be the best versions of themselves that they possibly can be.
Okay, we'll move on to Samir. Samir, at QBE, you've gotten some recognitions for your community work. In fact, from the Asia CEO Awards, you were part of the Circle of Excellence for recognition for this community work. Is this a big part of your company culture, giving back?
Absolutely, Mitzi, it is. You think about insurance, it's in the business of actually supporting the communities, the people in their hard times. And 2020 was certainly one of the hardest times that hit communities, people across the world, their businesses. And it was only relevant that in those difficult times that we are there to support and work with the communities. So that's exactly what we did. I think a big part of our culture is about trust. So in order to create trust with our customers, we feel that it's important to have trust within the firm first. And I think 2020 really demonstrated that. So the fact that there's a lot of, let's say, financial um, um, work in that capacity that is done out of the Philippines, sometimes one would feel that you are necessarily required to do that work in a sort of a specific secured environment in a building. And 2020 allowed us to actually allow people to take it back home and then place the trust in them so that we empower them to do the right things, right? And they delivered exactly that. I think we were in a situation where the entire firm was looking up to the GSSC here in Philippines to be able to work towards, for example, claims processing for our customers. And really proud to say that all of that happened without a glitch. The customer feedback was superlative. And I think it's all about, therefore, placing the trust in the employees, allowing them to do things. And actually then we figure out there are more innovative solutions that are possible, things which we never thought could be done, have been done. So it's going to set a new stage, I feel, for the industry around how we will work in the future, right? So it's quite exciting in that sense. I think the other aspect clearly is that, which we feel proud about, is the fact that we are a global firm. And and the pandemic actually allowed us to freely work across boundaries, if you think about it, without being restricted in certain spaces, physical spaces. So we have this thing about hashtag together, which is really about collaborating. And I think those two kind of define really beyond other values that we actually work for in 2020.
Yes, and as you said in your talk, hashtag together, that's essentially bayanihan, which you said is what you felt, right, in this whole year. We've felt that during this whole pandemic. Parikshat, let's move on to you. You oversee over 15,000 employees across the Philippines and Australia. Talk about your company culture.
Absolutely. So I think, we are a smaller organization, especially in the Philippines, under 10,000, about 1,000 odd people in Australia. So obviously not the magnitudes, limited number of centers. And we've always been a very high touch point organization, almost like a boutique operation where folks know each other a lot better because, you're working very closely being a very small team comparatively. And we've always had the kind of activities that everybody else talked about. So I guess the pivot to finding digital solutions or alternate solutions was the obvious thing. And we too did that, over communicating. But I think one of the things that resonates with me for 2020 is on the point of when times are bad, And I think initially we did what Amit said. We all went out on a limb and said, we'll pay the people, we'll take care of you. But we all know that wasn't sustainable for the long term. It wasn't like we could just open the bank account and let the money flow out while the money was not coming in. You know, at the end of the day, you have to be looking at all three pillars of your business: your employees, your clients, and your shareholders. You can't bleed money and continue to pay people. So I guess there were also times we got to a stage where you had to make some tough decisions. And I think the biggest evolution for me was the transparency side of things. We went and talked to people at all levels in complete transparency and told them what we were trying to achieve and how times were going to get tough for the next 30, 60, 90 days. Maybe by Q3, things will start to get better. And you'd be surprised what I thought going into these discussions would be violent reactions turned out to be words of consolation, words of encouragement, and people volunteering to say, I'll work on reduced hours, or I can do a different job. I'm a team leader, but I can take phone calls. I don't have enough of team members who are doing that. I'm a trainer, we're not training. I'm going to go on the phones. Or a team leader saying, I'll do the job of a QA while a QA is better equipped to take phone calls. My recruitment team, which was not recruiting at that time because it shut down, turning around and calling employees to check on their well-being when they were in lockdowns. So I think everything else being table stakes, you know, you have to engage highly, you have to make sure you're a stable operation. But to me, I think the revelation and the encouragement and the strength came from when people said, I'll take it on the chin. I might be part of that 10% that might not get paid this month or in totality, but 90% will sustain, the company will sustain, the industry will sustain. And when we come back together, our hashtag was stronger together. So we came back stronger together. I was telling Richard earlier, we were back up to 80% revenue by May, and April seemed like we were going to get knocked out of the park. It was tough. And May was already recovery. So that was amazing to me.
Excellent, very inspiring and such valuable lessons. Our government, our leaders can learn so much from you. I think there's a lot. You guys should give them webinars, but it's these are just great examples of leadership and what the people really want to see. Now, I know you all have talked about how you've really helped the staff and everybody looks after the team, but these are just some issues that came out. It seems that the pandemic also brought to light certain social justice and labor issues. And we know that unemployment is a big issue now. In fact, the Philippine Statistics Authority reported in December that its labor force survey tallied about 4.5 million jobless Filipinos in 2020. So this is the highest unemployment rate in 15 years. So we know that certain permanent contracts were shifted to floating contracts. This is because of having to cut down costs. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you've made sure that your employees really have the security during this time? I'm sure there are times that people have had to let people go. For example, with Concentrix, I know that Amit talked about hiring people who were let go from the hospitality industry. Amit, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and Mitzi, Rich and I were talking earlier about this. I think, see, as an industry, we are highly competitive. We've been competing with each other on talent, and Philippines, as we all know, is a very, very hotly competed market. You've got BPO companies in the same building, and the moment the employee goes out for lunch break, suddenly they have another offer in their hand because we want to go after talent from each other. But I think what we realized in 2020 was that we have to sustain the communities. That's extremely critical as an industry, not just as an organization. And what we did at that time was that we started looking at a lot of displaced workers. And typically, when we were hiring in the past, we were hiring a lot from other BPO peers. But in 2020, we actually changed our hiring strategy and we started going after displaced industries. And specifically, the tourism industry was the most displaced because that's where things came to absolute complete halt because there was no tourism coming into the Philippines, and tourism is a very large industry in the Philippines. So we started talking to the government. We said, how can we help? And very grateful that we were able to strike a very good partnership with the Department of Tourism. And what we did was we did these specific virtual town halls for people who were displaced from the employment. And we said that we are willing to put the investments up front because we know that you are not ready for a BPO job because you've been doing something else. It's a complete shift in career. It's a complete shift in culture. And we are willing to give you training. We are willing to put investments on you. And after that, if you find a better job in tourism, that's also fine. And if you feel that you want to come and work for us, that's also okay. And we did probably 50 such virtual job fairs for the displaced workers. We were able to get a lot of people who were trained, a lot of people who joined us. And it not only helped the communities, because at that time they really needed that employment. It also helped us because it gave us a lot of diversity of thought process. Our industry collectively will benefit if other industry members come and start joining in, because they will give a very different thought process to how we operate. I talk about myself in the same organization 21 years. I've probably created a very specific way of looking at things, but somebody who's worked in a hotel and then comes and start working for you in the BPO industry, they will give you very different perspective of how they look at customer service, how they look at various processes. And I think we jointly benefited. So we started doing this as something that could help our communities. But I think in the process, we also benefited quite a lot through the process.
Thank you, Amit. I want to throw the next question to Celeste also, because a lot of people working in the BPOs are women. In fact, I think we have a figure of about over 50%. And women have long dominated call center activities. And we also know that BPOs are one of the few workplaces where Filipino LGBTQ workers can find safe employment. Celeste, what are your thoughts on how women have been affected? They're primarily the caregivers at home. Many of them have lost jobs or maybe have had less. I guess they've probably, if someone had to lose a job between a male and female, it would probably be the female. What are your thoughts on that, on how this has impacted women and minorities?
I think we see that women in the country, especially in the BPO industry, have been given responsibilities at the workplace, and therefore the challenges of the pandemic, where they have to remain at home and be also a main, I don't know how to call it, caregiver or a teacher to their children. It has really challenged their sanity, I guess, in terms of how they are going to balance their time. I think in this situation, it is important that the companies understand these challenges and are able to agree to adjusting to how these women can be more productive in the workplace, at home, without sacrificing, their major responsibilities. And I guess the BPO industry being aware to a lot of these challenges, even in the global workplace, has adjusted significantly to make sure that women continue to be able to contribute and be proud of themselves as women in the workplace, and be also the shining light in their homes, even at this time.
Yes, thank you. Very true. That's, I guess, in a way that working from home can also be easier for women in that sense. Now, I want to ask you all, whoever would like to answer, there's also one way to cut costs. I think there's also, we're seeing the shift to more artificial intelligence with chatbots. So some people are worried that there's now this competition for manual labor as we shift to more digitized work. Would any of you like to comment on that? How will the industry be changing in terms of are we going to see more artificial intelligence? Will there be, what sort of shifts to the digital space are we seeing? Let's start maybe with Arthur. You talked about that in your presentation, that of course the human side still lends another texture or side of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think 2020 saw a rapid acceleration of digital technologies across all the industries that we collectively support across this panel. The reality is that the way that we operate within the world has forever changed, and digital technologies and capabilities have enabled that. So I don't think it's going away. I think it's staying. But it's interesting because 5 to 7 years ago, we started this AI journey, and people were talking more and more about it, and there were all these like foreboding headlines of AI is going to displace the entire industry. I think you just need to interact with, smart home devices. I'm not saying her name because she'll react here in my own house, right? But if you have smart home devices and you call and you talk to them and you interact with them, ultimately, that there's certain capabilities that they fall short on. And the other piece is that it's important to know that there's still a desire for human impact and human touch in our society and in our culture. And while the simplex type of work can get automated and will go away, the value add where, the more enriching type of work activity is here to stay. And I think that's pretty cool because it's an opportunity for us to grow ourselves professionally, to retool and kind of embrace this new future. I do not see it as the end of the contact center industry. I see it as the evolution of the contact center space. And I'm pretty excited, and why I use the word invigorated at the very beginning about the future that lies ahead. I'm very optimistic for all of us.
Great, thank you, Albert. Joseph, I want to ask you now, you are also a business development expert and you help build and lead global startups in the Philippines. What are you seeing? What are the trends in terms of what people are looking for? What sort of services and startups are we looking at in the coming years?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for that. I think, well, there's two sides to it, right? Because there's one that's just the Philippine startup industry, which is kind of going in its way and progressing very nicely. There's lots of really interesting Philippine startups coming up and some terrific accelerators who are now supporting those startups, like IdeaSpace, so on and so forth. And you're probably often hearing about the fintech industry doing very, very well here, and even e-com kind of picking up. But as for this industry and building teams for international startups who are looking more and more towards this kind of a model, it's really a wide range. I mean, obviously there's the constant need for tech people and tech teams. I think there's a worldwide shortage of developers for sure. You can never have enough developers. And often it's sort of looked upon to Vietnam and Indonesia and India and places where all of the fantastic tech talent is. And no doubt, these are extremely amazing markets for technology. But no need to look beyond the Philippines, right, for those kinds of things. And I think one of the key reasons for that, and one of the great assets of building startup teams, and more specifically tech talent as well in the Philippines, is yes, there is that tech ability there on the technical side, but also let's not forget how crucial soft skills are when we're talking about actually building teams. For one-off projects, etc., of course, it can be done by all these different other elements. But when it comes to communication, I don't think there's many places that would ever beat the Philippines when it comes to that. So that's one of the trends. And to be honest, anything which requires loyalty, resilience, or adaptability, which is pretty much what every startup needs, right? People who have those qualities. And those are three clear qualities of every Filipino. So that's what I'm seeing.
Right. Can you say something in Filipino to describe that? I just want to hear you speak in Filipino. Magaling. Magaling ang mga Pinoy, no? Thank you very much, Joseph. So, there's this thing, we always see lists of top, cities that are now, I guess, becoming known in the digital space. And we always see this competition between India and the Philippines. So I want to ask our colleagues here from India, that, there was a 2019 Tholan's list of top super cities for digital innovation. Manila ranks number 2 after, guess where? Bangalore. So we're always seeing, before, I think the Philippines beat India in terms of BPO. So I want to ask about, just comparing, I guess, the strengths between the Philippines and India, the strengths of each country. The Philippines has the world's concentration of call center workers, but it seems India has the bigger BPO market. They seem to be known for their digital innovation. So can I ask, let's start maybe with Parikshat. What is this, talk about this culture. What is it about India that maybe nurtures this culture of digital innovation? Or am I right? Or maybe you can just talk about more about the differences between Philippines and India.
You're right. I think it's also a cultural thing. I think it starts very early on in the Indian education system. I think the system's built in such a way where there's a high level of focus towards analytics and that kind of bent of mind that drives people. And then I think it's success breeds success. When you saw one huge company which was maybe a startup in the 80s rise and become a super company, and then people from there went on to form other companies. So you're absolutely right. I think when it comes to core IT services, there's absolutely no comparison. I think the numbers is in millions. I don't even have a track of it now. And when you talk about core BPO services also, I think where Philippines took the lead was on the voice side, and it's natural given the skill set, given the understanding of the Western culture, especially the US culture, with the cultural affinity that's existed in the Philippines for such a long time. It was an obvious thing. I think where India has definitely benefited is our organizations were smart to pivot, not that voice services have gone out. I think the other aspect that people miss out, India is 130, we're talking 1.3 billion, sorry, people, and it's such a huge consumer economy. Just the voice work to service India is in the multi-millions. So with that aspect not being looked at from an international landscape standpoint, the international market easily pivoted towards finance and accounting, HR services, engineering services, KPOs, and so on and so forth. So I think that is really where the core strength has been found. A lot of back office work like chat and email, non-voice channels still thrive much more in India. And again, the voice component is still huge now that it's dwarfed in front of non-voice, so it seems significantly lower. But I think it's finding the niche. And I think both countries have their niche. And I think Philippines is doing a good job now kind of growing on the IT services or the back office side also in parallel. And I think that will happen over a period of time. But obviously the competition is very different. You're talking a very different subset of population, 110 million versus a 1.3 billion. So obviously they're on different paths. But I think the outsourcing capitals of the world, so to say, countries for the world, cannot be taken away from India or Philippines in the near future, I would say.
It's good to see the collaboration here amongst, the countries. Samir, would you like to add to that?
I think what Parikshit has said is absolutely right. I would more concentrate on like what do we need to do here, right? Which can actually enable us to continue to have a very strong position, because I think the BPO market in its past tense to where it is going to dramatically change. We all agree to that with all the digital technologies which are coming up more rapidly than one would have expected, right? I think the biggest question we need to ask ourselves is, are we happy with what we have today, or are we dissatisfied? Because there is an element of dissatisfaction which is required really in a business environment to be able to transform. And that transformation first, I think, has to happen culturally before it will actually happen using technology. And what I mean is that if you're happy to the extent that we are doing a certain job and I'm doing it every day and I'm fine with it, then I will not challenge the status quo. But first I have to challenge the status quo and ask the question, why am I doing this? What is the relevance of this in the context of who my customers are? Because they're not sitting here, especially because we are in an export oriented kind of industry, if you will. So I want to understand who my customers are, how are their needs changing? So what do I need to do today so that I can fulfill their needs, which are not yet even there, they're going to come in the future. And that requires, first of all, this change mindset. And then you start thinking, how will I actually provide a perspective which is meaningful and is logical, because businesses run on logics and perceptions, which means I need to know what the data is. And I should be able to take some meaningful or make some meaningful outcomes out of the data to be able to drive decisions. Now, that is very different from, let's say, a call center where you are taking a call, which is on let's say, a structured or even an unstructured script format, right? So I think it's going to be about how quickly are we able to galvanize a large set of people to ask those questions, learn what is required, and then be able to fulfill that need. Because for that, the limit is not the call centers. It's not the basic transactional BPO work that we potentially are doing in a substantial amount today, but it's more about what's sitting out there, which we haven't tapped yet. And actually being in a captive, I see a lot of that. There is a dramatic amount of transformation taking place in the insurance industry globally, because the customers want, whether it is about a new policy or it's about a claim fulfillment, they want it now, they want it done properly, they want everything. And the old model where it'll be on a paper basis, you put in a claim and then it goes through, even if it is digitized, it's about scanning that document, somebody picks it up, puts it on a screen, figures out what's the right answer, goes through a lineage of approvals. is not relevant for the future. It's not relevant to the clients or the customers. So we know that this is going to change. It is changing. It's a question of who's going to pick it up. Are we sitting here going to pick it up, or are we going to leave it to somebody else to do the job? And then we are going to be told what to do and we will do that. And that's the transformation we need to begin with.
Thank you, Samir. Amit, would you like to add something?
I think just adding on to what Samir said, I think it's already happening. We are seeing it, like Samir is mentioning, in the insurance space. It is happening. We're seeing in the overall BPO space as well. We've been able to create a fairly large analytics practice in the Philippines, which probably about 10 years ago, nobody would have thought that we need to create an analytics practice in the Philippines. So that's something which, and very successful. Competing with global regions like India and the US, and providing a lot of value to the clients. I also feel, jumping on from here, is that when you talk about, digital presence and transformation in the Philippines, I strongly believe that Philippines is going to skip a generation. So if you go back to the China, evolution, they moved directly from so they skipped the entire PC revolution and moved directly into handheld devices. And I feel a lot of that is happening in the Philippines as well. Because now when I look at some of the startup scene in the Philippines, some of the new digital technologies which are coming in, they are at par with what's happening in the US or what's happening in some of the other global regions. And people are skipping a generation because we have access to technology. And the 2020 was a defining year for digital penetration in the Philippines, because what I thought would happen in 5 to 10 years actually happened in a year. Look at the e-commerce penetration. How many Filipinos were shopping online? Very, very few. And today, I talk to people, almost everybody's shopping online. Almost everybody's on a Grab taxi rather than going down and calling for a taxi, and so on and so forth. So while 2020 gave us a lot of challenges, it also gave us a very significant catapult in digital penetration. And I think Philippines will skip a generation and get at par with the global forces as well very soon.
Big changes in a very short amount of time, definitely. Now let's move on to look at, I'm sure a big part also, I guess, of the success of the BPM industry here is the strategic partnership between industry and government. So I want to ask you about what government policies or incentives do you find most attractive? So that's one in terms of government. And another question I'd like to ask, and you can choose which to answer, looking at, I guess, geopolitics, social political factors, your thoughts on economic links of the Philippines with China. Is that a boon or a bane? And we know that there are upcoming elections also. So it's been said that President Duterte we know that he will finish his term in June 2022. And there are reports saying that Philippine employment will be improving by the time we have a new administration. So what are your thoughts on that, on the role of government and in your companies? Let's start with Arthur.
Yeah, so I think our partnerships, I think a lot of us are partnered with PEZA here locally, which provides the right economic environment for investment. I know that PEZA has been really, it's been inspected in terms of the value of that program long term. And I think that the studies have shown that it has produced significant economic value. I think we're the number 2 GDP driver, soon to be number 1 over OFW remittances. And a lot of that has been through the incentive programs under PEZA, which I think have been really, really critical. So, I'm going to say this apolitically, because regardless of what you think about any individual, candidate, I think one of the things that I've seen as positive in the Philippines is the investment in infrastructure under the Build, Build, Build program. The number one complaint that, a lot of us would have had since the time that we've been here is, traffic, infrastructure, getting from location to location. It's hard to, bring business into remote areas when that accessibility is hard. So that investment in infrastructure, I think, is very positive. The build out of various different international airports, I think, is a strong opportunity for further economic growth and development. And pre the pandemic, the Philippines was one of the top 2, I think, GDP growers in Southeast Asia. And if you think about it from that perspective, what a great achievement. And I think the pandemic certainly took everybody a little bit off course. but I think the country is poised to return back, and I think government's very critical to that support.
Thank you, Arthur. Joseph, your thoughts? Especially for the start, I guess. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we have a slightly different model, I think. So we haven't partnered with the government on the same level, I think, as the rest of the companies here for sure. But, I mean, we've had very meaningful interactions with the likes of, let's say, Cubo, which is under DTI, and they really help the startup ecosystem, both here and also overseas startups looking to kind of enter in some form, which has been fantastic. And that's an organization that's really growing and even merging actually with IdeaSpace now. So they're becoming even sort of bigger and united into one entity to make not only building a startup in the Philippines kind of more attractive, but also, expansion from overseas for regional startups. But also we've managed to have some very meaningful partnerships with overseas governments, such as Enterprise Singapore, is one in particular, which, I mean, they've been more and more involved in the Philippines in particular, in terms of how do we get and encourage more and more Singaporean companies in general to go regional and look towards the partners such as us here in the Philippines. So things like that have been quite meaningful for us.
Thank you. Yes, definitely more collaboration across borders. Another thing I want to add in before I move on to the other three gentlemen is the Philippines, in terms of the coronavirus pandemic, the Philippines is one of the most vulnerable economies. So what about, how would you rate the government's action in terms of responding to the pandemic? Do you feel that you're getting enough support from the government, or are you having to really do things on your own, take initiative and do things from a more, I guess, from the private sector? Amit?
So I would, so going back to your first question, let's see, around, government support for the industry, I would say we are here because of the government support. Obviously, the partnership has played its course, and that is why the industry has been able to grow so big in the region. But we haven't finished yet, and we need to have continued support to be able to keep growing, because there are new markets which are coming up, which are challenging us, and therefore to be able to keep that edge, we need the support. And I think there are 2-3 areas. First is more investments on the physical infrastructure. I think build is very important, and we are seeing traction, but we need more. I think as an industry, we need more. Our clients need more, because obviously we are still not at par with some of the global destinations. So we need to continue to invest. I think there is progress, but need more. Second is our telecom infrastructure. With a lot of focus on work at home, on being able to have higher resiliency, I think telecom infrastructure has to really go up much higher. And I think there's a good progress coming in, but again, a lot more needs to happen. And the third thing is, I think over the years, we are seeing that with the industry maturing, there is a focus that we should take away a few of the incentives. I think that's probably at this time not the best approach when the unemployment numbers are so high. I think we need the focus, because this is one industry which can continue to generate more employment. So coming harder on this industry at this time might not be the best approach. So I think good support till now, but we need the government to continuously focus on some of these aspects so that we can continue to grow. On the pandemic support, I would personally rate it as mixed, because I think we've been slightly slow in getting the vaccinations into the region. I think some of the other regional peers have done better. I think it's picking up now, and I'm glad to see that things are getting better. We are partnering with the government and with the pharmaceutical companies. We recently signed an agreement with AstraZeneca and the Philippines government, where we've procured doses for 50,000 people, almost 100,000 doses, out of which we will donate half to the Filipino frontliners and half will come to us for our staff. And we want to continue making such more and more deals in the space. So we are willing to play our part. We are willing to fund for our employees. We are willing to make donations. But I think we need to make sure that the government goes in and locks those orders for the vaccinations, because the more delay it creates for the economy to reopen, and in general for the economy to pick up. And we are seeing that if we really benchmark globally, now we are seeing some good strides, but we did lose some ground initially. So I think a little more push would be helpful at this stage.
Very kind. I mean, thank you. I think a lot more push is needed from our government. Thank you very much. Parikshat, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think besides some of the key points that have already been discussed, so not to beleaguer those points, I think the whole infrastructure point is very valid. The telecom infrastructure is absolutely pertinent and even more pertinent today. We all experience that work at home agents, if they can't be stable, and that's what we're pushing to our clients, that will never work out unless we are able to give a stable platform. I think on the incentive side, again, that is an aspect I completely agree with Amit on. I think this is the time to make it easier to do business, make it easier to increase the jobs that we are creating as an industry, because I think there is definitely great opportunity that presents itself because of the pandemic. Like they said, after every war comes the opportunity to rebuild. This is that opportunity to rebuild, which can create millions and millions of jobs, because I think that is what is going to happen. So I think we've seen great support from entities like PEZA. It's been absolutely the backbone of the industry and supported it. But I think overall macro government needs to understand that the goose that lays the golden egg needs to do that for the next 20 years and not for the next 2 years. So I think that's really the fact. One other aspect that hasn't been touched upon, and I think from my perspective, I've seen it over the 14 years I've been here, academics, the education system, that has lagged behind. Going back to your previous question also on why other countries have leapfrogged in other specialized services and other things, is because they've pivoted, they've evolved as services have evolved. I was in a forum about 2 years ago where it was, I think, a CCAP or a BPAP forum, where we had somebody from the academe and the industry, and the lady, she was a dean of a large college I won't name, but she said, 25 years, I haven't seen the education system move 1 inch. We're still teaching the way we were teaching 25 years ago. So you can't continue to do what you were doing and not evolve that aspect and expect different results. So if we have to step up our game beyond just what I think, on the infrastructure, telecom side, on the incentive side, which is really the bones of it all, if you have to load that up to taking it to the next level, then we've got to produce a base employee that is then able to go to that next level. And that next level will not happen unless we take the education system and really think about it from a different aspect, how we can create employees of the future that are digital ready, that are ready to take on jobs of the future. The bots can come, they can take away the low hanging fruit, but then specialized services and other services really where we can make our mark. So I think that is one aspect that needs to be discussed openly. It needs to be thought about. Countries around the world need to be observed and what they've done, how they've evolved. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can shamelessly copy, because again, it's flattering those countries and it's serving our purpose at the end of the day.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. Education is so important. So really, we have to see more collaboration with the Department of Education, Commission on Higher Education, and collaboration. There's a lot of support, for example, for master's and PhD programs in India. We need to see that more here. Samir, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I think clearly we are where we are because of the significant contribution from the policy framework across different things from the government, and clearly PEZA has been exceptional in terms of some of the policy frameworks around that. I would rather than now focus on what next, right? So I think because that's more pertinent. And I think top two things have already been spoken about by Amit, which is sort of upgrading the infrastructure to make it more relevant, especially because the workspace of the future will not be the same as workspace of the past or where we are today. So having telecom connectivity will be mandatory. It's a critical need. Otherwise, it won't. We will not move forward. That's sort of number one. I think the number two then is also clearly education. So I agree with Parikshit on that, because if you really look at benchmarking, right, and I think you got to start looking at benchmarking globally because it's a global marketplace. Where does Philippines stand versus some of the other markets on education is important. Like how many of our colleges and schools are in the top 100 of global institutions, right? Think about that. I think the third one is policy framework, which has been great so far. It's a question of like what needs to change. So I'll give you an example, right? From a PEZA perspective, the companies are expected to operate in a certain physical bonded sort of environment. Now, yet we've seen when the exception was given because of the pandemic, everybody has been working from home and working extremely well. Is that an opportunity to kind of explore that? Because it can solve a lot of things, right? If you think about it. thinking about places where majority of us are located, Metro Manila area or Cebu. We are in other places as well. But the travel time for our employees is phenomenal, right? So how do we solve for that? How do we solve for the pollution and the traffic on the roads? How do we make sure that the environment is clean? How do we cut the huge escalating costs in these areas and really the clustering of all the talent into small pockets, because then it makes it, even from a city perspective, non-resilient, right? So how do you make Philippines as a country more resilient, where business can be done anywhere, because we are a country which faces so many natural pandemics and disasters? So if you think about all of that, the fact that work from home was possible ticked a lot of boxes, but that is not sustainable because the policy framework today is not in place to allow that. So I think it's going to be about thinking about what happened in the past 1 year, learning from that and using that as an opportunity to leapfrog ahead of competition, because even other countries have difficult frameworks. But if we can have a framework which makes it easier to do business, there's a huge opportunity there, I feel, at this point in time.
Thank you, Samir. A lot of great points. I wish we could go on, but I will come to our final question. This deserves, I mean, I think this summit can have a part 2, part 3, Richard. So let me end by asking all of you, you've all talked a little bit about what the post-COVID workspace might look like, but describe your vision very briefly of the workspace of the future. What would you like to see for the industry, whether it's your own offices or just for the region, the country? What would the post-COVID BPO, BPM industry look like? I guess the perfect scenario. Joseph?
Yeah, sure. I think it's, how would I summarize that? I would see it as probably just more sped up of what we've got right now, which is really less offices, or a hybrid in terms of office setup. So we'll see more, I think we'll see more hubs, not necessarily number of seats in the office for people, but let's say an open space with X number of hot desks, and then 3 or 4 times that headcount working from home. But then there's still the choice of working from physical spaces. I do not see, though, that offices will become completely obsolete. I think that physical need to meet with teams at some point and have that physical interaction, it's always going to be there. So I think we'll see a bit of a hybrid on that side. Then secondly would be how the service is offered, right? And just speaking for our own service now, I mean, we've always had a very sort of human heavy touch point in terms of how we actually offer the service. But I think going to the interesting points that everyone was talking about with regards to AI earlier, but that really good blend of, and Arthur kind of summarized this perfectly, but that blend of technology, but with adapting to the kinds of positions which will always need to be human, will be kind of what I see the future being. So offering the service sort of more and more through tech, but more positions being required, which are those that could probably never be completely and truly replaced by technology.
Nice, thank you. More humanized technology. Thank you, Joseph. Amit?
But see, 3 or 4 big themes. I think the first one, we believe that the industry will shift about 25% to work at home. In the long term, obviously right now it's very high, but even after vaccination and after pandemic, I think we will still keep having 25% permanent work at home roles in the industry. And for that, I would say hybrid is the term. We will have to figure out how to keep the engagement of the staff which are permanent work at home, and how do we create hubs for them where they can actually come, engage, and still feel to be a part of something larger and not completely isolated. So I think that's the first theme. The second theme is, I think we would see significant amount of investment on safety and well-being of the staff. So new technologies will continue to come in. We recently experimented with something called bipolar ionization, which is very expensive, but kills a lot of viruses in the air and makes the workplace more secure and safe for the staff and reduces the infection. We will see a lot more of that coming in. I think we'll see a lot more of such technologies coming in the workplace, because I think we have to start now realizing that we are in a new world. We have to start living with, a COVID-19 kind of a situation for a longer term. So how do we catapult to a point or evolve to a point where we are able to, create security for our safety for the staff, which starts to come back? And so I think that's the second theme. And the third theme, I think, is that we will start creating smaller ecosystems for a set of smaller teams. So you might see, instead of these large, big offices where you have like 5,000 or 10,000 people sitting together. You might see these smaller pods where there is a 50 people like a self-help group sitting in there, which is completely self-reliant and don't have to interact with others, because that creates a level of security for them. So I think those are the 2-3 big themes that we see emerging in the coming few months.
Thank you, Amit. Arthur.
Yeah, so I agree with everything that's been said. I think I want to go a little bit of a different direction, because I think also the contact center of the future is at an exciting, inflection point of evolution. So for me, I grew up as a contact center agent. That's how I started with my job at Teletech T-Tech. And one of the things that I've recognized is that as a frontline employee, sometimes this job can really stink, right? I mean, it's a really, really tough job. And what I mean by that is it can somewhat feel like making the donuts every single day, right? Like, so when you first do it, you learn the recipe, you're excited about it, but then you kind of come in the same day and it's the same flavor over and over and over again. And a lot of the contact center, we talk a lot about empowerment. It's a very overutilized term in our industry, but the reality is, if we're fair, we actually don't really empower our associates. There's a lot of policy, big brother type of things that kind of sit on top of, this industry that govern the way that our frontline workers work. But I think there's an evolution that's happening. And that evolution is you're seeing disruptor companies challenge legacy companies, the way that they've been doing things. They're a lot more agile. They're a lot more nimble. They're a lot more flexible. They move quicker. That's forcing legacy companies to rethink kind of structure, decision-making structures. And I think that they are much more open to a more consultative approach in the contact center space. And so I'm seeing a shift from clients telling us how to operate the business and saying, this is how I want you to train, this is how I want you to QA, and this is how I want you to provide oversight. And they're really coming to us and they're saying, help us. Help me understand where there are where there's friction in the environment. Help me understand how I optimize the digital technology solutions I have implemented. And who best to answer those questions than the frontline employees who are interacting with those customers every single day. And imagine how now this job evolves from making the donuts to every day and kind of following that recipe to now, oh, you know what? I have an idea for a different recipe. Instead of making the donuts this way, I'd like to make the donuts this way. I have a gluten-free idea. I have a icing idea. I'm going to put bacon on my donut. And you walk back and you can come back home and you can say, you know what, I impacted the customer experience for this Fortune 500 company with this idea that I've had. I think that just puts us on a different stratosphere in terms of where we're going to be at in a space, and it'll be a much more enriching job and a much more professional job than I think it has been in the past.
Well said. Thank you. Really good lessons there on how to make any kind of work actually exciting and always have that passion in there. Samir?
Yeah, I think I agree with that, with what was just said. I just feel that, both the workspace and the workforce of the future will be more flexible. I think having dedicated workforce and workspace, having more commoditized environments is passe. It's slowly going to fade away. So we will have opportunities where somebody has a specialized skill set who can offer that as a service to multiple different environments, and it can be across industries. Similarly, the ability to have a more networked, I heard about the term hybrid, right? Kind of a work environment is definitely on its way in. How soon does that happen? I can't answer that. I think it will be happening much faster than what we can imagine, because the pandemic tells us things can move very quickly and people can adapt very rapidly to change. So I see that certainly coming our way. The question is, are we prepared for it, right? And that's where we were going earlier in terms of, do we have the right kind of infrastructure capabilities, which means people, processes, technology, physical kind of boundaries and limitations. And so as a country, like, how prepared are we? But the next generation is certainly looking at that, and people are thriving on it, especially if you look at sort of the West and you look at the Silicon Valley, that's how they operate. I think that's going to come into our part of the world very, very quickly. So exciting times, but it means that there won't be any more cushy jobs where you can spend your lifetime. It'll be about always being agile and always networked and always learning.
Well said. That's the way to survive. Yes. Well said. Parikshat.
So, at a macro level, I'll simply say hybrid is the way to go. We internally ourselves are targeting a 70-30 kind of a split whenever things get back to whatever the new normal looks like, 30% working from home, globally 70% still coming back to site. And I think a lot of it is also client driven. Let's also not forget that a lot of clients today who have approved work at home have done it uncomfortably because their systems are robust, but it was never built to be accessed at home. A lot of financial services company that carry personal information don't like that setup, and a lot of them have not approved it. So the reality is that majority of the workforce will come back to a controlled environment, and that too also brings with it the elements that we like about the industry. It brings the camaraderie, it brings back the learning, it brings back all of the activities, which is essentially what is required. The other perspective I want to provide is I think we have to also start looking at work at home, not only from a frontline agent service delivery perspective. The way we are looking at it is multiple scenarios. So I'll come to the work at home scenario later, but I want to talk about support teams. One of the things that I realized is that I have a shared services team that sits out of the Philippines that services 5 of our countries remotely, whether it's payroll, whether it's accounts receivable, accounts payable. So it's like a shared services, internal shared services for our company for 5 countries, including the Philippines. This is a team that is critical to operation for us. And this team goes down, everything for those 5 countries can be impacted, whether it's payroll or anything else. I don't see why a team like that needs to be working from a site. So I'm not just thinking about lessening the densification at my center by making agents go to home. I'm also thinking about other teams that never need to work from a site. Sure, we'll bring them in once a month or twice a month to have that interaction, that touch base with their leadership. But essentially, to do their job, they can be sitting anywhere in the world with robust infrastructure and providing those services. The other aspect we're trying to break the mold on is recruitment. Recruitment has always been an in-person activity. We're still doing a lot of it. We've moved components of it to online, digital. We have digital assessments. But we are testing a technology which is going to be 100% contactless hiring. A person does not need to come in till the time they go ahead and send us a signed contract. Literally, it will be, you'll get everything instructions online. You will go through your interviews digitally. You'll get your documents pushed to you digitally. You sign them digitally, and it'll come back to you digitally. So I think where I'm thinking about it, or our organization is thinking about it, is how we can look at other departments that can really go away from office all the time. Coming back to work at home, I think one of the aspects that we're looking at is how do we also convince our clients to keep a sustainable number at work at home, is providing them solutions that go well beyond just the basics of good hardened telephony infrastructure and webcams through which they can view the agent and do a town hall or a one-on-one and stuff like that. We've been testing technology, and it might be Big Brother-like, but it's also essential to convince clients to do it. We have tested technology with multiple clients, which send out alerts if somebody picks up a digital device. If a person is about to snooze, it kind of alarms them. If a third person comes into the frame of the computer, it sends an alarm to our security teams. So we are testing technologies that then enable us to go to clients and say, sure, it's a tough decision for you to make, but here's the enablement we can provide you to be more convinced that this is a controlled environment, or as controlled as it can be if they were working within the physical boundaries of a site. So I think those perspectives is how we're looking at it. Everything else that the colleague said is absolutely pertinent, but I think we just also need to think out of the box on beyond the agent's life and agent life cycle. What can we do about this?
Thank you. Exactly. Think out of the box, challenge the status quo. Thank you for all your really amazing insights. Celeste had to leave us earlier, but again, it's really such a pleasure to learn from all of you. I want to thank you for all you do, for choosing to be here in the Philippines and helping the economy. And good luck with the rest of the work, and have a great year. And again, this brings us back to the first words that we said at the start of this discussion. All of you are bringing this into the work. We're seeing more transformation, gratitude. I guess at the end, with all this technology, which is deemed cold, you're bringing in this empathy and compassion. And thanks for all you do. Richard, back to you.
Thank you very much, Mitzi Borromeo, for that really engaging question and answer session. She dealt with people. I mean, these are senior people. In our event today, we had people employing roughly 200,000 people in this nation. So these are key people in the prosperity of the country. Thank you for being with us for this Asia BPM Forum 2021. I can tell you this industry has always been something that really moves me emotionally because I've seen the amount of community development and people development that this industry has been responsible for. So really has been a pleasure being part of this event. That was Asia BPM Forum 2021, and we'll see you again next year.